up for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah. All right. Good evening. I would like to call the meeting to order. We do have a student here to lead the Pledge of Allegiance. And please tell us your name and what school you're from.
I'm Finley Gallagher, and I'm from OPMS.
Very nice. Do you have a friend?
No, you're coming. I'm Taylor Farmer, and I'm also from OPMS.
Very nice.
Please stand. Put your right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much for leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. We do have a full board here in person tonight. We did take action on a few items during closed session. Mr. Drum, would you please read those out?
All right, please bear with me. We have 4 items to report out, and some are detailed. In closed session tonight, by motion of member Darren Drum, seconded by Dan Summers, the board approved the expulsion with suspended enforcement of student number 23.09 through December 20th, 2024. The roll call vote was as follows. The ayes were yes. The ayes or yeses were Drum, Summers, Perfect, Dome, Phillips. There were no votes against and no votes to abstain. Next item. This is regarding public employee dismissal, discipline, or release. In closed session, the board took action to issue notice of non-reelection to probationary certificated employee ID number 658718, a special ed teacher pursuant to Ed Code section 44921.21, subdivision B, effective at the end of the 23-24 school year, as directed by the superintendent or designee to send out appropriate legal notices. The roll call vote was as follows. Drum, Summers, Perfect, Dome, Phillips, aye. There were no votes against and there were no abstentions. Next item, public employee discipline / dismissal / release. In closed session, the board took action to issue notice of non-reelection to probationary certificated employee ID number 653927, a special education teacher pursuant to Ed Code 44921.21, subdivision B, effective at the end of the 23-24 school year, and directed the superintendent or designee to send out appropriate legal notices. Roll call vote was, ayes were Summers, Drum, Perfect, Dome, Phillips. There were no votes against and there were no abstentions. Forgive me, this one gets a little detailed. Next item on the agenda is reporting out is public employee dismissal, discipline, release pursuant to Government Code Section 54957. In closed session, the board took action to release the following temporary certificated employees pursuant to Ed Code Section 44954, effective the end of the 23-24 school year. The employee numbers are as follows. 646617, 539190, 659327, 636201, 661099, 600799, 384285, 634280, 605983, 647525, 249163, 658916, 478104, 621719, 631644, 149127, 635099, 370942, 641462, 385102, 659010, 651-129. The board directed the superintendent or designee to send out appropriate legal notices. The roll call vote was as follows. It was actually a unanimous vote. The ayes were Drum, Summers, Perfect, Dome, Phillips. There were no votes against and no abstentions. Got through it.
Thank you very much. And you are not finished yet, because
Oh.
our next item is instructions for addressing the
All
governing
right,
board.
I might need some more
Yeah.
batteries for this microphone, Keith, when we're done. All right, I apologize. Good evening. Instructions for addressing the governing board. Ramona Unified School District welcomes your participation at the district school board meetings. Your participation assures us in continuing community interest in our schools. To assist you in the ease of speaking and or participating in our meetings, the following guidelines are provided. Orange request to be heard cards are available to all audience members who wish to speak on any agenda item or under the category of item E, which is public comment. These presentations are limited to 3 minutes per person or 15 minutes per item. Submit completed orange cards to the board recording secretary in advance of the item's presentation. Orange request to be heard cards will not be accepted once the agenda item has commenced. Speakers are asked to direct all comments to the board. All participants are asked to be respectful of others speaking when they are addressing the board. Public comment is set aside for members of the audience to raise issues that are not specifically on the agenda. These presentations are limited to 3 minutes per person or 15 minutes per item. Public comments may be submitted online at the link listed at the top of this agenda. Please note that electronically submitted comments will be printed and distributed to the board members, but will not be read aloud during the meeting.
Very nice. Thank you, Darren. All right, we are now on item C5, and that's approval of the agenda.
I'll move approval.
Thank you, Darren. Do we have a second?
Second it.
Thank you, Roger. All in favor?
Aye.
That carries unanimously. Thank you. Item C6 is approval of the consent calendar.
I'll move approval.
Thank you.
I have a request to make. I would like to consider as a separate item, agenda item F2, please.
I'll amend my motion to approve the consent calendar with the exception of item F2, which we should probably hear.
And do you agree with the amendment to that motion?
Yes.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
That motion carries unanimously. All right, stop me when we get to that, just in case. We are now in section D, that's recognitions and presentations, and our first item is D1, Olive Pierce Middle School Showcase. Maybe. Can't tell. She's got a good teacher voice, I can't tell.
Very loud.
Yeah.
There we go. Good evening, board members, cabinet members, members of the community. We are very excited at OPMS to present our video to you tonight and share some of the amazing things that are happening at Olive Pierce. I could not be more proud of what we've accomplished this year together as a team. Speaking of the OP family, we have many members of our family here tonight. Can you all please stand if you are a family member of OP? Woo! Amazing, amazing team right here, and we could not feel more blessed to get to come to work each and every day. And without further ado, I want to introduce Finley and Taylor.
Hi, I'm Taylor Farmer,
And hi, I'm Finley Gallagher.
and we're some of the leadership students at OPMS. This video we are about to show you shows how much leadership classes come together on our campus.
The video will also demonstrate how OPMS includes parents in their kids' academic and social life.
And one of our one of our leadership clubs put together this very video. Let's give a hand to our very own broadcasting club, Olive Pierce today. Leadership isn't just about working hard to keep our school a better place.
It's also about bringing together the entire school to have a better middle school experience. And at OPMS, we have spirit.
S stands for strength.
P stands for perseverance.
I stands for intent.
R stands for respect.
I stands for integrity.
And finally, T stands for teamwork. At OPMS, we always show our spirit.
Welcome into the gates of knowledge!
Buenos dias, board members, superintendents, and OPMS community. I'm Austin.
And I'm Maddie.
And this is the OPMS School Board presentation.
Now here's our show's agenda.
Today, we'll take you into some of our favorite classrooms and give you a taste of what an OPMS student gets to experience at our awesome school. For instance, today is National Working Moms Day. So if you have a mom who works, and they all do, give her a hug. She'll probably appreciate it.
Today is National Plant a Flower Day. The Garden Club should like that. Hey Austin, do we have a joke for today?
We do, but they'll just have to wait for it. Hey Cody, how's the weather?
Hello there, board members. Today's weather's going to be 100% positivity.
Thank you, Cody. Now sit back and enjoy a little taste of what we call our OPMS spirit.
OPT, what it looks like from the outside, is just the morning broadcast for OPMS. But the real meaning of OPT is to set the tone for the day, to promote the culture of OPMS, and it's a way to inspire others using different types of media.
In addition to putting on a live show every day, these students learn how to do every single job and walk out of OPMS knowing how to run their own live broadcast.
We make the hot chocolate and give them to the kids. We walk up to the class and we hand out the cookies. It's good to hand out some cookies.
STEM stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math. I liked how we build the rockets and we got to see them shoot in the air. STEM was hard because it challenged us. The best part about STEM was seeing all my friends and building our projects together and working together.
What I like about Web is that we involve the whole campus with all our projects, like No One Eats Alone, all of our leadership classes, and everyone around campus can participate in it.
This has been awesome. I enjoyed all the activities and seeing everybody hanging out together. It's been really cool.
It's fun. If you're having fun out here, we're enjoying ourselves. It's a great opportunity for the kids to mingle with the adults. Good to go.
I'm just trying not to embarrass the girls.
Nos parece una actividad muy buena porque se integra toda la familia y los niños pueden mostrarnos su escuela, sus compañeros y sus maestros.
Sí. De acuerdo.
HHC, Hispanic Heritage Committee, had an ofrenda inside the library, and what I felt about it was that I really felt connected. I really felt that my school was respecting my culture. I think it's important because many people celebrate holidays differently, and it's important to not put hate on other cultures and to always respect everyone else, like if we all belong.
Alright, so this is the introduction to small engines. So today we have the kids over here actually on the high school side. We're going to continue to do 2-stroke motors, 4-stroke motors. We have a lot of textbook stuff that's involved, and then we like to pair it with some hands-on.
NJHS is the National Junior Honor Society. Our primary goal is to help people improve their grades or the struggles that they have in their classes. We also host the 4-point nation and the estimation jar each month, as well as the yearly spelling bee and the occasional early release. I like being in NJHS because I like helping people with their struggles, because sometimes I struggle and people help me out.
I love Teens After School program because we get the chance to try new things and have a fun time while doing it. We start off in the Teens main room, checking in and then moving on to several classes including art, cam club, CrossFit, culinary club, jam club, theater, and video club. We also have an opportunity to catch up on homework, but if you're all done, then you get a chance to chill in the game room. Teens is also where we get a chance to learn or practice sports like flag football, basketball, and volleyball.
What do you like about ASB?
I like that we're always like preparing for spirit wear days and like dances and all that stuff.
I like that we all work together and share out our ideas, and that we all come up with really good and fun events. Like we're having a Starry Night dance.
What I like about ASB is that we get to have fun and dress up.
Don't forget, here at OPMS, we always show for allowing us the opportunity to show you some of the brightest spots at OPMS. We say it, that's our motto, that we are truly better together.
Thank you so very much. Absolutely delightful. All right, Brian, you were right. He told me the video's a little on the long side, but they tell me it's worth it. It is so worth it. Thank you so very much. I'm glad you didn't cut any of that. Very, very nice. Thank you.
Real quick, one thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Finley and Taylor, great job.
Oh.
Nicely done.
Yeah. Yeah, that was so cute, sharing the chair. Like, that's good. All right, very nice. Well, thank you, and of course you're welcome to stay, but you don't have to. We understand. All right, but you're going to miss Natalie's report. So, Natalie, report from student board members, and you are the sole student board member tonight.
Good evening.
It's on. It was on. Go ahead and hit it on again, and just yep. It thinks it's on.
Good evening. My name is Natalie Wren, and I'm the student board representative for Ramona High School. Thank you to Dr. Thurman, President Perfect, and the board and cabinet for having me here tonight, to providing me with the opportunity to represent Ramona High School. To start off, Ramona held an every 15-minute, 2-day program which included an assembly about the choices and actions of drunk driving. Many students, including myself, got to be a part of this amazing program. We learned about the actions and consequences of drunk driving, Our very own Ramona varsity song team competed at nationals this past weekend. They've been working hard all year getting ready for this. They placed first in the team performance division against many other teams from around the country. They are now coming home as national champions. Our winter sports are very busy. Our soccer team made it to CIF semifinals. Our spring sports have started, and we'll keep you guys updated. As of right now, many games are being postponed due to weather, but they will continue. Lastly, our students are very excited to head into spring break, and I want to thank you for having me here tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to represent the amazing community at RHS.
Natalie, thank you. Very nice report. Any questions for Natalie? No? Okay, well, as always, we love your participation here, but we do understand if you need to duck out early. So, thank you. All right, we are now on item D3, and that is a report from California School Employee Association, Chapter 733. No one here tonight for that. Moving to D4, report from Ramona Teachers Association. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. It's a little last minute, so I hope I don't mess up. Welcome. Mrs. Cranock wants to shout out to Miss Angie from Vista Hill, who leads the Incredible Years program at Hanson RE and Mount Woodson. She plans and delivers lessons for whole classes and for small groups using puppets to support the delivery of the lessons. This week's lesson was on teamwork. The lesson talked about everybody participating, taking turns, doing their part, and encouraging others when things don't go as planned. Miss Gunnett's TK students read Dr. Seuss books this week with their 4th grade buddies from Mrs. Douglas's class for Read Across America Week at Ramona Elementary. The ag classes over at RHS have been very busy. They've been working right along with many of the industrial partners here in Ramona. In fact, the floral design folks had the opportunity to participate, and they made the funeral arrangements for the every 15 minutes program. The ag mechanics students are finishing up the welcome and leaving Bulldog country signs that can be found on the 78 on your way to Escondido. Cahoots Feed and Pet gave a presentation to the interdisciplinary ag about animal feeds and nutrition before they had to develop their own feed as a class project. And they've also been working with KCW Processing in Ramona, providing students with a chance to view a pig pluck. Please don't ask me what that is because I have no idea. But it says in real life, giving them the opportunity to see how the circulatory and respiratory systems work together. I can't imagine what that was. Okay, anyway. RCC campus was recently gifted a grant from Home Depot to beautify the school garden. Everybody's been enjoying seeing the fresh flowers and the vegetables. They're also enjoying a few fun assemblies lately from the County Office of Education and from Mr. Wiseman as the culmination of their music time this year. Mrs. Collier's class at Mount Woodson has been learning about transforming matter in benchmark ELA and science. Students hypothesized about what happens when adding water to cornstarch. Is it going to be a physical or a chemical change? Plus, they recorded the physical properties of the materials used. Overall, the students had a wonderful and messy time investigating changes in matter. We would also like to give a great shout out to OPMS, even though they already left, all right, for all the great things that they're doing and for being here tonight to present to you. So, thank you.
Very nice, thank you. Excellent report. All right, we are now on section E, and item E1 is request to address the board on items not on the agenda. Do we have any orange cards tonight?
Not yet.
Okay, very good. Moving on to section F, education services. Our first item to address is F2. That is approval of disposal of obsolete instructional and library materials. That's the item that we pulled from consent.
Good evening, board. Is that working? Are we working? Okay, there we go. Good evening, board. Tonight we brought on the consent agenda the approval of disposal of obsolete instructional and library materials. These lists are compiled from school sites and within the district office. They have been found to be either obsolete, outdated, missing, in disrepair, an old adoption, or any of those other board approved reasons for disposal.
Very good. Maya, you pulled it. Did you have some questions?
Yes, it's materials, and like last time, looks like timeless classics. They're not in the category of damaged or beyond repair. A lot of them are in frequent circulation or outdated, and I can't imagine why too many I had to mark, and that's kind of category. There were more of those in the school, like level MHS, Montecito, or other high schools, less of those in lower elementary school. Or, for example, some of those books, I thought, could I have them? For example, Animal Farm, printed in 1946. It's actually a lifetime edition of the Animal Farm. Can I have that? I can purchase it. Or some books I thought I would like to have. They're so valuable to me, or all those classics. And I was really thinking, let's put this on hold for now and take another look at those, maybe dedicate a separate section in some district office or an RHS library for those, maybe consider them outdated at all. There were, just a second. Also, a lot of books were older adoptions, and I was looking at them, I'm thinking, oh, those are actual older adoptions of history and social sciences. I would be curious to see how to start. But can we just keep one copy of all those older adoptions just for reference somewhere in the district office, so we can go back and look how to start before and compare the results, even for math or for science, for everything. If we have better or worse results, if we had different results, let's see how we're teaching differently, or how was it taught before, especially in history and social science. Can we keep those? I just want to put hold on all of them right now. There were some books that were talking like the death and life of great American school system, or just a second. Animal Farm, or hold on. Like leaders. Besides the classics, I thought, okay, hold on, like, no, we can't do that yet. I would like to go through all of this with a fine-tooth comb, really.
So I think that our staff has already done that. Leslie, do you have any comments in response?
Sure. We have very limited space in our libraries and at the district office, and when you do see an item that's outdated, many of them were like VHS tapes or different things like that. There are texts that are not being checked out by our students, and we're trying to get students to read. And so we want to have books on the shelves that they want to check out, that they're interested in checking out, that are not just taking up space, and not having space for the ones that they're really interested in, and that we're getting more engaged, more students engaged with that literacy component. So if you see outdated, that's kind of where that falls in. If you see damaged, it's because it's been damaged. Often when it's outdated, it's something that probably hasn't been checked out in many, many, many years. They're not just our library techs, and our librarians are lovers of books. They really aren't just choosing books to get rid of books. They're choosing books that aren't being checked out in order to replace them with books that kids are interested in reading, or ones that are damaged.
So what is the process for disposal of these materials?
I kind of figured that might be asked. So I did pull up our admin regs and our board policy. So when we have instructional materials that are still in good shape, we can donate them. We can donate them to any public institution, state institution, library, public agencies, nonprofits. We can also donate them to our students, and that's often what we do, is we create book piles or have used book drives or anything like that, and we can donate them to students in California, and just for the purpose of increasing literacy. And then if they aren't picked up there, then we can donate to the library or other places like that. If they are not usable, if they're damaged, then we also have a set of rules that we have to follow for discarding those as well, as far as the words are mutilating them
Right.
so as not to be sold for scrap, right? So there are certain things we have to do according to board policy and our admin regs.
So, nonprofits, that could include like the Friends of the Ramona Library over there, where they can put them in their bookstore.
Absolutely.
Have we networked with them in the past?
They cannot sell the books.
Okay.
They can only give the books away. So that is something that has to be as
They have
as
a free cart
correct,
outside,
a free
yeah.
cart, exactly.
Okay.
Doesn't it's for no good reason to me. So I don't know why kids are not interested to read those, and what are they going to do? All those books are of no interest to the school children that used to be of an interest, and all those books on American history, and all those books on World War II, and all kinds of, I think, very educational, very useful books, and we're getting rid of those. What are we bringing? And also, can I have some of those, or purchase, or in whatever fashion? Can I have some for my own?
Right.
You would qualify as we could donate to an adult in California for the use of promoting literacy.
So yes. Yes. I mean, there might be some practical issues so far as where to find them and access them, and if you wanted to browse through all of them. I doubt they're all in one spot right now. They're at each school site. So we would need to maybe work with Leslie on this.
So
Yeah?
they will not be removed before I'm able to
Time frame?
take them. Some
If
of them?
approved for disposal tonight?
If they're destroyed, we have 30 days according to our administrative regulations for donating them. I believe we have about 60 days
Okay.
before they have to be.
New York, exactly. Animal Farm 6 is damaged.
Let's check with Leslie in the next couple of weeks.
I think if you have a couple of titles that you'd like us to see if the school has and they're damaged but they're usable, then we can.
That's not to be usable.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Usable enough,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. And Leslie, in some cases, we still have copies of these.
Absolutely. Just because
Right.
we might be getting rid of some of them
Some, but
doesn't
not
mean
all.
that there isn't still one or two on the shelf. It just might have been we had 3 or 4 of them. We're keeping 1 or 2.
Do we have any sort of digital content available for our students if they want to read Animal Farm but not a paper copy of it? Do they have a way to do that?
We do have quite a variety of online resources through Clever, through some different subscriptions that off the top of my head,
Right.
I don't know what all of those are right now, but kind of going towards that direction also, like most of the college libraries aren't actually the libraries that we might have thought we had or that we did have when we were in college. You walk in and there are not books on the shelves, or there's only one floor of books because everything has become digital. So we're not there yet. We love books. We love to hold books. But we do have quite a few of those type of options also for students.
Are you letting teachers get choice, go and pick them too? I know all the extra books go to the teachers first, and then they class them.
Yeah, it's kind of that same process also. Often before we even put them on this list, we want to make sure that our staff, before we're doing that, and then for personal use, yes, then if somebody wants to, grab a couple copies for their kids or for themselves personally, then we can do that after this. But as a teacher, for example, you might have seen on the first few pages, a few pages from the district office. Well, in the bookshelves in my office, we have had freebies are given to you, and maybe we did a book study as a certificated alder 15 years ago, and that 4 copies are still sitting there. And so before we even put them here, we first sent an email out, said, hey, is anybody interested in these? People came, kind of pilfered through, grabbed them for professional use, and then it went here if it was something, and then we can always go for personal use after that.
Can we keep at least maybe one copy of history, social science, older adoptions, just for reference?
At your house?
Probably
I'm just
not.
teasing. I'm just teasing. No, we wouldn't keep the older ones just because the standards have changed and the framework has changed. We really wouldn't. I was just adding to, Mr. Dome's comment about dropping all the books on her front porch. Yeah.
Can we have a special collection?
Not in education services, because it would get very confusing over the years to know which one was adopted. That's why we have a DO list right now, because we've been going title by title to each book to figure out when was it adopted. We're doing a lot of cleanup right now in our office, so it'd get very confusing if we started storing books from all of the different adoptions. A new facility.
A new facility. Idea.
I have a question.
Yes.
I have a question. So these books, you refer to them DO?
Some of them.
Okay.
So on the first couple of pages,
Yeah.
the location was district office. Yeah.
District office, okay. So
But
these,
most of them are school site books.
these books are being replaced or being discarded because they're worn out?
Most of
or
them.
you have multiple copies and space is an issue? Or some of them are on tape, which,
Yeah, there was a lot of VHS tapes
Okay.
that were leaving our schools.
and you have this list of these books. Okay. Here's my question. I'd like to know what books you're retaining. I assume that you have a list of those as well.
Yeah, Destiny, our library inventory system.
Yeah.
Yes, we have a.
I'd like to see a list of the books that we are retaining in the library.
Okay, I can
Well,
see. I'm not sure.
Maybe we could visit school sites.
Yeah.
And you can check it out yourself.
That's a great idea.
If it's available in this form,
Let's go visit. Dan, let's go see.
if it's available in this form, that would save trips to 11 sites. I'm just saying.
Are you saying you don't want to go visit schools?
I'm not saying that at all.
I can see if I can get a print. I'm not sure
I
I
would
can
like to
get
know
a
what books-
user-friendly printout of the inventory. I'm not super involved in the Destiny library inventory tool. Maybe
The
is
one night
anybody's in
Corey's
here
not
that knows?
here.
I know, that's what I was
Right?
thinking. I'm
The
like,
one night
Corey's not
Corey's
here.
not
She
here,
could
yeah.
tell us how easy that would be
Yeah.
to get a
list
link for you. Yeah.
It's not my intent to make a monumental task for you or for myself going to 11 sites. I'm hoping
If I
that
can, I'll put it in a board update.
if you have a list like this for the ones we're getting rid of, maybe you have a similar list for the ones we're keeping. And I'd like to see that.
Okay.
I'm not a big proponent of books in electronic form because there is a notion that actually it's better understand.
Yeah.
To put children. That it's such a great advantage to have all those books. Oh, we don't need them on paper anymore. I would think that's that's what I think.
Got it. Okay, this is an action item. Does anyone want to propose an action?
I'll make a motion that we approve the disposal of the obsolete instructional library materials as listed, with the request that staff and board member Phillips get together and see what she's interested in having donated.
Or any other board member?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Do we have a second? Thank you, Roger. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Thank you. That carries 4-1. All right. Now we are on item F3, and that's presentation of Ramona Unified School District math progress.
Good evening, board members. Very excited tonight to bring forward Matt Filson, our newest RUSD teacher on assignment. Matt has joined the Education Services team, and he has been supporting TK6 mathematics district-wide. He is here tonight to provide an overview of the support and the impact that both his role and the work that the teachers and administrators across the district have been having on our mathematics.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, welcome. Thank you for
Hi.
being here tonight.
Thank you for having me tonight. So tonight I have the opportunity to share some of the work that our elementary teachers are doing throughout the district, mostly in the K-5 realm today, and share what's happening with training, what is happening in our classrooms as well.
Bring
There
back
we
the
go.
middle
All right.
schoolers. Yeah.
Restart. All right, let's get started. So the current frameworks really lay a foundation for the work we've been doing in our district since the 2018-19 school year as far as math training. The latest version of the framework states that, or it lays out the curriculum and instructional approaches that research and evidence show will afford all students the opportunities they need to learn meaningful and rigorous mathematics, meet the standards, access pathways to high-level math courses, and achieve success. Mathematics represents far more than calculating. Active learning experiences enable students to engage in a full range of mathematical activities, exploring, noticing, questioning, solving, justifying, explaining, representing, and analyzing. Through these experiences, students develop identities as powerful math learners and users. The implications for instruction for our students is that they do more than learn and follow procedures for solving problems. They need to be given opportunities to develop a deeper conceptual understanding of the mathematics and to make meaning of mathematical procedures, all work that our teachers are doing and engaged in through the current CGI training that they're doing. Briefly, this is this concrete representational abstract model of mathematics represents some of the different representations that students may be using when they're doing mathematics. In a concrete representation, students are using math tools and manipulative to show their thinking and to represent their thinking. A representational model would be students using drawings or pictures, dots, tally marks, things like that to represent quantities in their thinking. And then in an abstract model, students are using symbols, including numbers, notation, operational symbols, to show their mathematical thinking. Our teachers are seeing that depending upon the context and the quantities in a problem, that this isn't a straight line progression from concrete to abstract, and then we stay at just always knowing symbols, numbers, and operations. That depending upon the situation, going back and forth between these three different representations allows students the opportunity to have access to the mathematics, to show what they're thinking, and to be able to participate in the mathematics completely. So CGI, what is it? Our K-5 teachers are engaged and have been engaged in this model of mathematical training. It's a body of research that informs our teachers about the development of children's mathematical thinking, and then how teachers can promote this development in ways that honor children's thinking and leverage that to create greater learning. It's also a framework for understanding children's mathematical thinking and how this thinking evolves over time. And so teachers are learning to attend to the mathematical ideas in children's problem-solving strategies, what they do in the classroom, interpret the children's understandings as it's reflected in their strategies, and then to be able to decide how to respond on the basis of the student's current understanding. We're asking our teachers really to teach for deeper understanding. Problem solving, strategy discussions, teachers being engaged with students in the classroom to develop a common understanding of what it means for students to make sense of mathematics and work from what they currently understand or what they bring into the classroom for teachers to build on their understanding and really deepen their mathematical learning. So our collective commitment to accelerate student learning states that all students construct learning through relevant and rigorous tasks that demonstrate standards-based speaking, reading, writing, creating, and problem-solving skills. And in a balanced math classroom and balanced math instruction, all of these goals are represented. Teachers are providing purposeful skill-based learning. Students' thinking is visible in the work they do on the paper, in the work they're building with math tools, in the conversations they're having about mathematics. That there are strong expectations of outcomes, that teachers and students are both looking at the work, judging or evaluating what they currently know and where they're going to go next. And the CGI work provides many opportunities for differentiation. Many different access points for students to be engaged in the mathematics and to show that what they understand about mathematics. So tonight we're going to look at some work from Jennifer Keller's 5th grade classroom at JD to show an example of kind of what it looks like in the classroom and what students are doing. So based upon what we know from the research and how children develop mathematical understanding, our teachers provide standards-based problems using strategies that make sense to them. They represent their thinking in increasingly sophisticated ways, and the teachers are guiding that development of children's thinking. So we're going to look at a few different samples and examples of these different representations of thinking. So this problem states, after our munch and gulp, we had 5.5 leftover brownies. If Maddox, Mariana, and Holly share them equally with no leftovers, how much brownie will each of them get to eat? So this first representation, you can see it's direct modeling. There are 5.5 brownies. They're all represented there. This student shared out the first 3 brownies, 1 whole brownie for each person, and then partitioned the remaining brownies into 6, shared those out equally to arrive at the 1 5/6 brownies. Next model, again, all 5.5 brownies are represented with a drawing. And this student cut all the brownies into thirds. Shared out the 1/3 pieces equally, and then the half a brownie was also cut into 3 pieces to represent a 1/6. You can see there some guidance from the teacher helping the student to notate the 5 1/3 with a number sentence. And again, the student was able to use some understanding of equality, that 2/3 is equal to 4/6, to put together all those parts to also get the 1 5/6. In the next model, the same thing. The student drew 5.5 brownies. In this case, the student cut them all into 1/6 pieces, shared them out for 11/6 to get 1 5/6. And again, we see some help from the side from the teacher that 11 1/6 is equal to 1 5/6. So we have, again, another representation of that 1 5/6. Here we get into some more of that abstract thinking. There's no more drawings. This student uses their understanding of division and of fractions to represent that 5 brownies shared with 3 people is 1 whole brownie with 2 leftovers. The 2 leftovers are divided by 3, and that 2 divided by 3 is equal to 2/3. And then the half brownie divided by 3 is a 1/6. Again, we can see that student using what they know about equivalency to add the 2/3 as 6 to get the 1 5/6. And this last example, it's a little bit hard to see, but this student thought about 5 1/2 is 5 3/6, and that 5 3/6 is equal to 33/6. Shared those 33 pieces with 3 people and got 11/6, which is equal to 1 5/6. So we see here a kind of a progression of different representations. Those students who may not be at that abstract point yet of knowing it with numbers are able to model it and be able to get into the math and represent their thinking and arrive at an answer the same way that students who are thinking abstractly can. The next step in this work is then that students are engaged in explaining their thinking. Students explain their solutions and justify their mathematical reasoning. They analyze their work and the work of others to evaluate their understanding and efficiency. In these pictures, you can see that the students are paired up. They are representing their thinking in a visible way by sharing what's on their paper. They're also explaining their thinking to each other. It gives the students an opportunity to compare their thinking to others, gives them an opportunity to be peer teachers and share their thinking with others. So they're representing their thinking and making those comparisons in their representations. The next step is then that the teacher is strategically selecting some of those strategies for students to share with the whole class. Teachers draw connections between the different strategies that students are presenting. They ask questions that are helping to guide students to develop increasingly sophisticated strategies and to nudge them along to maybe those students who are ready for that, to move from maybe that representational stage to a more abstract representation. So that teacher, really what we're doing is flipping that model of teaching from, I'm going to tell you what to do, now go do it, to here's a problem, use any strategy that makes sense to you, solve it how it makes sense, and I'm going to build on that understanding to make sure that you are meeting the standards, that you are learning the appropriate and the rigorous mathematics as we go along. So what's happening in the district to meet these goals? This year, in order to meet these math standards, our teachers are participating in 8 different cohort groups for a total of 28 full-day CGI professional development sessions. Our teachers throughout the district have presented lessons for feedback in 12 different school site push-in days. And they've participated in 45 coaching sessions with the Math TOA to date. Those could mean anything from modeled lessons to observations for feedback with the teachers. The principals are engaged as well. They participated in 3 half-day sessions to observe classrooms and then to discuss the work they are seeing in their classrooms and then to plan best practices. And they're also participating in a total of 6 principal-less partner learning walks focusing on productive feedback. So we have 3 different groups of principals. Our elementary principals are partnering up to work together, visit classrooms, talk about what they're seeing in classrooms, and practice giving feedback to teachers as well. So that's an overview of the work that we're doing currently in the district. I appreciate your time, and if you have any questions, I'm glad to answer them.
Very nice, thank you. Board members, any questions? Yes.
When will the effort be evaluated?
The effort, well, we have map testing 3 times a year. We have our CASP testing at the end of the year. And then on a daily basis, each problem is a formative assessment in its own. Teachers are evaluating students' learning in the moment, making decisions in the moment by asking questions about what students are doing. So there are a lot of different opportunities for both formal and informal assessment.
Thanks.
Roger.
Examples that we have, what are the
5th grade.
And then I'm confused by, you mentioned multiple times abstract thinking. What I'm confused about is usually children do not develop abilities to abstract thinking until after the age of 12. It's just basic child development. So I don't know what you're talking about.
So the abstraction would be the use of numbers, symbols, operations, right? So that CRA model that's been around since about the 1980s represents the different ways that students represent their thinking. So that abstract isn't necessarily, I think, the scientific abstraction you may be thinking about, but more of a representation, right? An abstract representation represents their thinking with numbers and symbols and operations.
It's called the new math, right?
Yeah, that's not new. I mean, that's been a model that educators have used for a while.
Maybe a little. Darren, did you have anything?
Matt, thanks very much. Great explanation of different ways that our fifth graders are able to come to the same conclusion, which is super important. You know, especially once they get to higher education, they're going to be asked to make a statement and then defend it, and their statement is right as long as they can defend it appropriately. So I like the fact that we're giving our students different tools to accomplish the same task, because this one might not work for all of our kids, and this one might not work for all of our kids, and we have so many different ways to reach them and show them that when you take 5.5 brownies or whatever, you know, we're talking about, and you want to split it up 3 ways evenly, pick a tool, whichever works best for you, whichever triggers understanding in your mind. It's kind of exciting.
Yeah, I mean, and that ability to move back and forth between a physical model or a representational model or a using numbers and symbols model, if we don't want to call that abstract, but being able to go back and forth between representations and different ways of thinking really builds bridges and builds those dendrites that we have to retain that understanding and the conceptual understanding of maybe why those formulas and why those rules work when we get to them.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Sure.
So, you know, when we switched everything to Common Core, then it became a mixture of what we're talking about, plus local set of problems. What's the ratio on that? Like, how many just problems, just sets of problems versus actual, you know, solved in more critical?
Yeah, I mean, every classroom's different, but I think in balanced math instruction, that a lot of big ideas are through problem solving, so like through word problems, and instead of teaching an operation, presenting a problem, it's here's a problem to solve. Use any mathematics that makes sense to you, solve the problem, but we're building toward that big idea. Like in 5th grade in this problem, a big idea, right, is that in a 5th grade standard is that 2 divided by 3 is equal to 2/3. That's a 5th grade standard. That's evident that that's come across in the work for some students. Some students are still building toward that, but they still have access to it. But there is space in the classroom for routines that are on fact fluency routines and games and activities that build fact fluency. There's built-in problem solving, and then there are a lot of conversations about standalone equations and solving standalone equations or using standalone equations to represent your thinking in order to problem solve.
I was curious, I mean, it's really great doing it this way because students need to be able to really understand their problems with more applied, more realistic.
Right.
That's how we just naturally do it. So I think that's really helpful, and doing it at such a young age, because if you don't do it and then all of a sudden it's presented to you in high school, a lot of people shy away from it.
Yeah, and the teacher's responsibility is that I'm doing that professional noticing, right? I'm noticing what my students are doing when they're problem solving so I can address misconceptions. I can ask questions that are going to guide them to those next steps, so they're not always drawing pictures of blocks, right? So they don't go to high school algebra and they're carrying their base 10 tools with them to their high school algebra classes, right? That we're developing their mathematical thinking and their conceptual understanding so that they're prepared for those higher level math courses.
So what's the next step? Are you gonna come back, share what's going on?
When I'm invited, sure. Okay.
All right, very nice. Thank you so much.
All
Very
right,
good
thank you.
presentation. We are now on item F4, and that is presentation of RUSD site plan for the arts.
Good evening, board. It is been a long awaited for all of us. On November 8th, 2022, California voters approved Prop 28. And that Prop 28 is something to celebrate. This is the taxpayer voted in funding that we receive for expanding our arts program across the state. And so in Ramona Unified, we're getting just a little less than $800,000 in order to do this. And I believe we've talked about it before, that the money actually is determined based on student enrollment and our unduplicated count. So every site has a different amount based on the number of students they have and the number of unduplicated students also. Each year, we are required to bring forward to the board that plan, which shares with you, and the plans are linked in the agenda and were, I believe, also provided in your meetings prior to the board meeting, that show how many teachers, how many classified personnel, and how many teaching aides will be hired as a result of these funds, and how many pupils will be served, and the number of school sites. Every single one of our school sites will be expanding the arts. To give a just brief overview of what each of those plans entails, we'll be hiring an additional 3 elementary arts teachers, one for visual arts, 1 additional music teacher, and 1 additional performing arts teacher. So we'll have a total of 4 arts teachers at the elementary school, including the current music teacher we have now. And so that will be 4, and there'll be a rotation. So students will have music year long, and then the other 3 are performing arts teacher and our visual arts teacher and our PE teacher, who is temporarily funded through the Learning Recovery, through Art and Music Block Grant. They will have a rotation of about a third of the year at each site. So, which is really nice. At secondary, we'll have a theater teacher at Olive Pierce Middle School and a theater teacher at Ramona High School added, 1 FTE at each. In addition, Ramona High School will have a 0.75 FTE added for visual arts. They'll also be hiring a classified position, 1 paraeducator to support and push into all of the arts classes as well. They're still determining on whether that's going to be a push into the music program at Ramona High School or into the, or kind of a shared position for all of them. They're still working out those details, but they do know that the funding, that they're going to use that for 1 classified, 1 3/4 FTEs at Ramona High School, 1 at OPMS. And all of our students will benefit from this across the district.
Right.
There is a shortage across California of thousands of art teachers. Yes, challenges. Very true. Very true. So this is an action item tonight for the board to approve the plans as presented.
Ask away.
So, how much money is left for the block grant not being hired?
This isn't the block grant. This is Prop 28. So Prop 28 has strict requirements of the funding, and so at least 80% has to be used on staffing. We're able to fund these positions using at about 90% of the allocation that each school is getting. It will depend on who we hire and how much they cost, right? But that is about the budget that we're budgeting for in order to make round whole people numbers, right? If you only go to 80%, then you only have like 3/4 of a person, and that doesn't equate to an art program. So we had to massage that a little bit and move to 90%. The remaining 9% goes to materials and supplies and professional learning for the teachers, and then 1% is held back for admin expenses.
Okay, so what do we do for supplies?
Mhm.
It's always a big issue for a teacher.
Yeah.
So we doubling them, your supply budget, what do we do?
So for in each plan, they wrote out for each year. I don't have each of those plans because they were so thick, what each school site has, but they have developed their plan for how they're going to use those supplies or provide professional learning. I want to say for some schools they have like $12,000 a year for supplies. Some is a little more, some is a little less. It kind of just depends on the amount that was allocated to that particular school site. Yeah, so building out the plans at every school site, we actually surveyed parents and teachers to get feedback on what the students to what the students wanted in this case. That's also a part of this requirement, was having all of those educational partners involved in this process. It also went to school site council. We've been talking about this in pretty much all of our committee meetings that we've had in order to seek as much input as we can as the plans were developed.
So, I mean, some classes don't require as any consumables as others, but like band, instruments,
Yeah.
lots of sets, so, I'm hoping this continues every year, especially with our state.
That is that's one thing the principals keep asking. Wait, you mean this isn't temporary? And I'm like, no, this would have to be voted on by voters to have it removed, because it was voted in by voters. So I think we at least have it for a while. I would never want to say forever, because,
No.
but it was a voted in proposition by the taxpayers to, I want to say it's 1% of Prop 98 funding goes to Prop 28.
Well, I appreciate all the work you've done in bringing everybody together.
Yeah. It's been a very, very exciting, the arts committee that has been meeting regularly and just kind of building out this vision, and it's been a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Very nice. Thank you. Thank you very much. Any other questions from the board? All right. This is an action item. Thank you.
I'll second.
Very good. All in favor?
Aye.
That motion carries unanimously. All right, we are now on item F5. That's report on mid-year local assessments.
Governing board, we know how important it is for our local board to know how our students are doing and how we're measuring progress at the local level. Not just what the state requires of us with the CASP testing or the dashboard, but actually what are we using in our local district to assess students and to measure progress. So one of the questions I think Mr. Summers asked just a minute ago was how do we know this is going well, right? I've shared tidbits in the stories from the classroom in our weekly updates. The teachers who have really embraced that mathematical thinking and really attending to student thinking in elementary are seeing phenomenal results. Phenomenal results. We have a lot who are still getting on board, so we're not there everywhere yet, but those that have just really really bought in, it's incredible what we're seeing as far as meeting growth targets. But tonight we have here Robin Aaron, Director of Assessment, is here to share with you all of our local measures and the progress we're making, and share some of our celebrations and some next steps that we're still working towards.
Good morning. Thank you very much. Or good morning. It's been a while. It's been a day. Well, good evening. Thank you so much for having me here today. And I am excited to share some really neat data with you in regards to our students' performance and progress on our local assessments. First, we're going to start off with our elementary student performance and progress. And this is a table that demonstrates our reading growth based on our measures of academic progress, or MAP assessment, that we give our students 3 times a year, but for certain grades, and then certain grades only take it 2 times a year. However, because of that, we're taking a look on this table at winter to winter growth and the percent of students that are meeting their expected growth targets. Our MAP assessments are normed reference tests. So essentially what they are is they've taken a look at what a typical first grade student or a typical second grade student, based on the number of instructional weeks, should have X amount of growth. And so what you see here at first grade, 53% of our students have met their growth target from winter of kindergarten to winter of first grade. And that's how you would read that. So at second grade, 48%, third grade, 52%, and so on. This is a cohort table, so every, if you look at the pink, for example, That shows the same students year over year and their progress, as opposed to looking at grade levels for 6 years going across the table. Does that make sense? That red line represents a very major shift in our educational recent history at 2020, and so that was just a visual marker to show how progress might have changed or been impacted due to schools being closed or to the COVID restrictions. We do have some exciting things though. When you take a look at 5th grade, you'll notice that 50% of our students, the highest in the last 6 years, are meeting their growth targets. Winter to winter, when you take a look at 1st grade, you're also seeing a stabilization at that 53%. And then when you take a look at our current 3rd graders, they have reached their 52% of them are meeting those growth targets, highest for that grade level, for that cohort of students. Really exciting though, when you take a look at this year, this is just fall to winter, and you take a look at especially those early grades 1, 2, and 3. The 9.8 for 1st grade is the expected RIT point growth for a typical 1st grader, and our average 1st grader is growing by 11 RIT points. 2nd grade, the typical 2nd grader should be growing 8.8 RIT points, and our RUSD 2nd graders are growing 10 points, 10 RIT points, and 3rd grade 8. When you take a look at 4th, 5th, and 6th, while we didn't supersede the typical norm, you'll notice that we just missed it by 1 or less RIT points. And we attribute that early success for grades 1, 2, and 3 to explicit phonics instruction that's happening at all of our elementary schools. It's really making an impact. When you take a look at some of our dynamic indicators of basic early literacy skills, or our DIBELS assessments, last year for our younger students, we had we took a look at the number or the percent of students that were at the minimal risk or negligible risk. So students who are strong readers for their grade level and had solid early foundational literacy skills. That's the light blue or the teal, the winter of 2023. When you look at the winter of 2024, I'm so excited to show the growth that we have far more students that are at that negligible or minimal risk, meaning they're really reading at the grade level. They have those foundational literacy skills that they're supposed to have. So we're growing. Mathematics. So here we take a look at mathematics, and this again is our winter to winter growth. So from winter of last year to winter of this year. And when you take a look at our progress for 1st grade at 56%, 56% of our 1st graders are meeting their growth target. It's important for me to tell you too, I think this will build meaning. If a student performs higher on their MAP test and receive a higher RIT score, their growth might be a little bit less than say a student who earns a lower RIT score. There might be more growth available there. So the RIT point growth is based on where they performed the last time they took the test. But these are the percents of students who, according to the MAP test, you should make X number of RIT point growth, and 56% of our 1st graders met that growth, and so on, 48% of our 2nd graders. Some things to note here. When you take a look at our 2nd grade, across the board, 48% is the highest that we've seen in all of the last 6 years that are presented here. Something else to take a look at is, again, those 3rd graders are really demonstrating significant growth for that specific cohort at 50% of them meeting their target growth. And oh my goodness, this is amazing, because when you take a look at this year alone, going back to your questions, Mr. Summers, around how is this measured how is mathematics measured? Again, 1st grade, a typical 1st grader would grow 10.1 RIT points from fall to winter. Ramona 1st graders are going 12 RIT points. 9 RIT points is typical for 2nd graders. Ramona 2nd graders are growing 11 points. If you look at all of this, 3rd grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, and even 4th grade was at 6 the average was 6 RIT points, and the typical is 6.3 RIT points. So we were almost there. We actually have a brand new NWEA account manager because our previous one retired, and she was going over some of the data and just building the relationship with me. And when she got to this, she actually went, wow, what is happening in Ramona with mathematics? Because this is not typical growth and should be celebrated. So it was neat to see that. So we celebrate and we do our happy dance because learning loss mitigation is actually happening at our elementary levels, and we're super excited about that. I also am excited to share about our secondary and what's going on with our local measures for secondary students. We used to give the MDTP through UCSD, and our teachers had actually asked for an assessment that matched our scope and sequence for our mathematics adoption, that was aligned to our standards more so than our readiness skills. And so many years ago, we actually brought our team of teachers together and we created local assessments that could help inform our instruction based on what had been taught. These assessments were given over the last 3 years, and here you can see the formative assessment 1. And even though this year's progress may not have been as strong as last year's, you can see we are far above where we were for the most part when we first initially gave these assessments. This is for grades 6, 7, and 8 over 3-year progress. And then integrated math 1, 2, and 3. However, our teachers noticed that while this definitely informed our instruction regarding the current standards and the grade level content for that course, it didn't actually give any diagnostic data on if a student wasn't meeting the standard, what were their gaps? Where do we need to meet them so that we can build them from their strengths? And so after conversation with our math team, and we've asked every school site and the teachers and the school site administrators, the request was to shift to map testing. So we now give map testing in grades, first grade, all the way through high school. And while we only have one measure point, we gave it the very first time since many years, this past winter in January, February. What you'll see here, so this is just 1 point in one score, but the darker blue represents RUSD's mean RIT score, and the light blue is the normed expected for the grade level. And check out 9th, 10th, and 11th grade. We are exceeding that typical norm, average mean. So really excited about that growth there, and we are not far from it in grades 6, 7, and 8 for the RIT score. Also, when we take a look at MAP has this has a projection for the percent of students who will meet CASP scores. And again, this is stronger when we have more data points, but right now it's based on one data point. What percent of students are projected to meet the CASP as of right now, one moment in time. So this gives us that opportunity to look at our interventions that we're providing our math students. And I can tell you that that at Ramona High School, they're actually really taking a look at their interventions for mathematics. They have integrated Math 1 intervention courses that are supporting the students to address and mitigate the learning loss there. English Language Arts also has common assessments that our English Language Arts teachers in grades 7 through 12 came together, and we locally created English Language Arts assessments, and we actually chose to do a micro-focus on reading literary texts. Even though we know reading informational text is super important, but English Language Arts is the only place the students really get literary text instruction. They get informational text instruction in ELA, in history, in science, in CTE, in many other areas. And so we really wanted to be able to hone our skills in one area, but how we analyze literary texts is a transferable skill to all reading skills. So we came up with this focus, and based on our 2 years of, last year was a pilot year for the assessments, and then we gave our first assessment. Again, we're actually in the process of giving our second formative assessment, which is it's a performance task, so it's not just reading, but it's our ability to analyze reading through and demonstrating our thinking through writing. So that is in the process right now. And we're definitely seeing areas of growth for secondary ELA as well. And so, what works? I was actually just at an all titles conference last week, and California State is doing a deep dive into root cause analysis for why students are not meeting performance levels or why students are meeting performance outcomes. And the number one reason that so far they are finding that they shared was high quality first best instruction. That is the difference maker. And so what are we doing to support high quality first best instruction? We are providing coaching. As Matt was explaining, he is able to co-plan, co-teach, provide feedback. We're working with site principals to provide our teachers and our instructional team with better feedback. And by teachers, I do mean all educators, everyone who has the opportunity to support and teach a student. So that is not limited to certification. We are taking a look at those research best practices, explicit phonics instruction every day, problem solving every day, working with numbers every day. That is what research proves to be most effective. We're collaborating across all programs, special education, general education. We're really trying to improve our ability to collaborate on behalf of students to make sure that everybody is working together to support our students. And we're focusing on the standards. What is expected of us in the standard? What is the level of rigor, and are we meeting it? And when you look at our collective commitments to accelerate learning, all of that is mirrored in that high, first best instruction. Differentiations, when you looked at those math problems, that's a perfect example of what differentiation is. You're giving a student a problem, and you're giving them any opportunity that they know how to solve that problem. Everybody has access to the problem, and then we build their thinking up to that grade level standard and beyond. We've got students who are already there and needing to be pushed. How can we push them through that feedback that you saw in some of those later examples that Matt showed? We're making sure student thinking is visible not only to the teacher, but also to the student, so that the student is aware of their learning, their gaps, what questions they need to ask. And then, of course, we need to know our impact. We need to know we've said this before, it is not only the decisions that are being made by the adults in the room, but also by the students, and what is said and what is not said, what is done and what is not done, what is planned for and what is not planned for. All of that impacts the students and their learning. So we do have so much to celebrate. I do see that learning loss mitigation is happening across the board. And I just want to say thank you to all of our educators. Teaching is hard work, and it takes skill and finesse. It takes knowledge and compassion and heart and soul. Teaching takes a village, and I am so thankful to be part of this village here in Ramona. So thank you for your time. Do you have any questions for me?
Thank you. Questions? None? Okay, thank you very much. Nice report.
Thank you.
Great. Results ongoing, yeah. Yeah, results ongoing, and we're judged so much with the dashboard, right? So. Right,
Yeah,
right, yeah.
we're on our way there.
Yeah, we'll get there,
We
Okay.
do too.
Yeah, right, we're all kind of excited to see
We're
that.
really excited about that first through high school math measure too. They're all that map, being able to see that growth from elementary all the way through high school is going to be
Right.
exciting as that continues.
Absolutely. Okay, F6, report on the LCAP survey overview.
Yes, good evening, board members. It's that time of year. We did wrap up our LCAP survey. I know you're very familiar with the LCAP element, so I'm going to kind of breeze through those first few slides, just reminding you that a part of this LCAP process is we must engage our educational partners, and a piece of that has our LCAP survey in mind. Our LCAP survey has questions on it, some that are required by the state and some that are local questions that we have decided that we need the answers to here in Ramona Unified in order to make good decisions on actions and services and expenditures. The LCAP process is a continual improvement cycle. We're constantly looking and evaluating the needs, relooking at goals, actions and services, and student outcomes. It's never ending, right? Just a little reminder that we have RUSD board priorities that are embedded throughout our goals and throughout all of our actions and services, and we also have the state required priorities that must be included into the LCAP. We try to provide this clear picture where we align our LCAP goals in Ramona Unified with the state priorities and our district priorities, so it makes it clear for our educational partners how everything is actually connected and in working together. You will notice something a little bit different about our goals this year. We had 5 goals last year. This year, we're proposing a 6th goal. It is a required goal for us because we can celebrate this. Montecito High School and Future Bound Independent Study School have received Equity Multiplier Grant funding, which means about a little over $200,000 will be coming to that school site. And as a requirement of that funding, we must have a goal that addresses that funding source and those schools. So you'll see that proposed goal 6. By June 30th, 2027, students at Montecito High School and Future Bound Independent Study will increase achievement on the College and Career Readiness Indicator for all students, including socioeconomically disadvantaged student group. There will be more to come in future board presentations about what that looks like and what those actions and services are, but we just wanted to draw the board's attention to that early on because that is something that literally we just found out about last week. And on to our survey results. And we did do a happy dance. Daniel came down to the office and he's like, "Did you know?" And I was like, "No." And we're like, "This is fantastic." We always want more money, right? Survey participants, we had 3,682 responses. It's just a little bit lower than the year before. In 2023, we had 3,816. Interestingly enough, we had 900 unsubmitted surveys in the wings. And the majority of those were high school kids, right? They started the survey, they got through, they maybe just didn't hit submit. And so that is, we would have actually surpassed our number of total responses had that they actually click submit. We had a lot of other groups had that same, you start it on your phone, you don't finish it, that's one of them, right? But our largest group was actually our high school kids. I did ask my daughter, "Did you click submit?"
So if people started and didn't finish, do you get that information?
No, we don't.
Not at all.
No. I'm like, can't we just go in and click submit wherever they were? But that would be disingenuous.
How long does it take to do the survey typically?
Not very long, actually, unless you're providing really detailed qualitative information. If you're doing comments and really doing that piece, we've tried to just pare back the questions as much as possible to what we really want to dig into. I don't know. I was gonna say maybe 10 minutes max. Okay. If you're being really
I got a little bit of feedback in the community that it just takes too long, so I abandoned. Right?
Yeah.
Well,
I would say depending
can't they just
on
pare it down and get to the point? Yeah.
If I would say depending on how much you read the question and if you didn't understand the question and had to think about it, it might be a little bit longer.
I'm guessing this one individual probably was trying to give really detailed responses, so it
Well,
took longer?
there were some of those,
Yeah.
and that would definitely take longer if you're typing up a response, for
thank
sure.
you.
And we did ask for more qualitative information. We asked specific questions of students this time about what's hard in school, specific questions of teachers on what do they need to help support our English learners. So we tried to get a little bit more detail in the survey results.
Can I put Natalie on the spot?
Yeah.
Did you know about it? Yeah. Did you do it? You did? Did your friends do it? Did you submit?
We did the survey in our home meeting since last
Oh, okay, good. And then, okay, yeah, got it. Well, thank you for that. Yes, I appreciate the honest answer.
So we'll start with trusting and respectful relationships. This is a question that we've asked over the years. And I will just kind of start by saying every single slide I'm going to show there was improvement from last year, which is so exciting to me. There are some where the question or the answers were a little bit different because we didn't have a somewhat, and I'll explain that. But any of these that are in this format right here, we saw an increase. As far as all groups saw an increase from when we're talking about very well and well. Students to feel cared for, same here. We have parents, staff, elementary and secondary students. We see that same shift where elementary students are feeling a little more cared for than our secondary, but I think that number has grown as well. If I look at our secondary students from last year, 35% said well or very well, and this year it was 74%. And so for us to really be celebrating, these results should really, really be celebrated because the increase we've seen over the last year has really been evident. RUSD schools being safe, that also we saw gains there across the board, parents and students. If we just use parents, for example, feeling that our schools were safe, this year we had 86% of parents are feeling that our schools are safe. Last year it was 72%. So that was more than 10% increase for parents feeling that their students are safe at school. For secondary students, you see, I think this is just another really good one to highlight because sometimes we have this conversation and we think, oh, there was a school shooting, maybe that had something to impact, right? We've had that conversation before. We had 63% of our students feeling that they are safe. Last year it was 39%. So pretty impressive gains that we've seen. RUSD schools are clean. Again, this was an increase as well. We have 94% of our parents feeling that our campuses are clean. Last year it was 87%. I'll use elementary students this time. It was 75% this year, and last year it was 64%. Big jump in secondary. This year was 71%, and last year was 47%. So we're seeing great gains, from our custodial staff ensuring that school campuses are clean, and our maintenance crews ensuring that we have well-maintained facilities to the best that we can with, the older facilities that we have, obviously. Again, same, we have 88% of our parents are feeling that our schools are maintained, and last year it was 78%. I'll take staff. We have 69% staff this year, and last year we were at 55%. So it just really is across the board. We're seeing an increase in all groups in every single question, which is really exciting to see. Home to school partnerships, this is one that is a little bit different. I don't have last year's data because the questions have changed a little bit, but just showing like what do our elementary students feel as far as how does the school partner with their family, and our secondary students, and how do they feel about the school partnering with their family. So you can see that there's the majority of that circle is well or very well, which is pretty exciting to see. This is the one where our somewhat disappeared this year. So looking at how well does your school ensure you are ready for the next grade level. We'd like to think that that yellow is now absorbed into the blue for 23-24, and so we're just about right on par for where we were last year. We did dip by one this year from last year, but pretty stable from last year to this year. And then looking at feedback for elementary and secondary students, how well does adults at school give you feedback? You can see that again, we have the majority of our pie is well or very well, which is exciting to see from our students. And then secondary students, same question that we had for elementary 2 slides before. We're looking at that, how well does your school ensure you're ready for that next grade? A little bit of a dip here compared to last year. If we were to be adding the yellow and the blue together, it's a little bit, I don't know, different types of apples between last year and this year, just because somewhat was removed from the survey. And that is the LCAP survey results. Any questions?
The
Yes, it is.
So, essentially, is it set up for you to use twice?
Yes. Students cannot. Students had to log in using their student ID. So students could not have taken it twice, but community members, staff, parents, anybody could have taken it twice. And in fact, we actually encourage them to if they have students at different school sites. If I had a child at OPMS, we ask them to take it as an OPMS parent and as an RHS parent or a Barnett parent, because we want those different perspectives. And I will tell you, those site principals clamor because we do give them their site feedback specific to the site, the comments and the data, and they're like, where's my site? Because they pour through all of that data that they get for their own school site, and then they work to share that with their staff as well.
And if someone has submitted detailed comments, do they get that?
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. We share all comments with our educational partners also. They do get a redacted version, so if there's somebody's name, we have redacted that just for the protection of employees or students. But other than that, they get every single comment. We do not take anything out.
Very nice, thank you.
Yes. Yeah, we would agree. There are a few questions in there, and in fact, when you see the LCAP annual update, you'll see where we've called them out. There are some questions that are required by the state, but we found out that we can add more detail. For example, there's one about are you informed of your legal rights as a parent, right? And that's what the state asks. We can actually add what those are and that they're in the parent handbook that they sign at the beginning of the year. We can add that to the question, we just can't take the question out. And so that's actually already in our annual update to make those shifts for those questions that are a little more ambiguous, or somebody that's not in this profession and doesn't know. It's programs and policies is one of them, and then your legal, I said it a minute ago and I lost the words now. Yeah, like all of those pieces that are in like that parent handbook, right, exactly. So we're adding some context to it. We've been given permission. We were reading that, and that data actually looks a little diluted, right? It's like you see this shift, all of this data, you see very well, and then you get to these questions, and all of a sudden you're like 25, 25, 25, and you're like, they don't understand that question, right? It's very obvious which ones are not understood, and we're definitely going to add some context.
Right.
We can, do you want it for next year or do you want it for this year? Because the survey questions may change next year. That's just why I'm asking. Sure.
You need to be more specific?
Yeah.
So how can I
can add those into a board update for you.
So you will list?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes, yes.
Right.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, definitely, for sure.
All right.
That's actually kind of what we have, like PDFs of it.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
All right, very good. Thank you very much. Oh, did you? I'm sorry,
Yes.
Darren. Yes.
This is, I share your joy. And I hope, Brian, you're very proud. And everybody, from you to everybody, every employee in this district should really be pleased with some of the results that we're getting. Overwhelmingly positive results for some really important things that we are trying to do in this district, which is build trusting and respectful relationships with our students.
Yeah.
And 87% of the community members who took this survey believe in that, believe we're heading in the right direction. Our students feel cared for. What more do you want as a parent? Other than a quality education, the obvious, but that's really what you want and demand out of your local schools, is that your your students feel cared for. Our schools are safe. That we don't need to discuss that because that's more than a demand. That's an absolute requirement. We made some really good progress in our schools are clean, because that was not so good in the past, and I think this staff and this board has made a dedication to spending money to maintain and provide upgrades to our sites, and it shows here. We had a student board member thank us for fencing in a previous meeting, and those are the things that make me feel good as a board member, that we're making some really positive movement forward, and we have a little bit more money to spend, but we're also making wise decisions with those funds, and you know, our staff are taking pride in where they show up, and you know, it shows from top to bottom in some of our scores. I cannot not think that all these things are related as an ecosystem. We provide clean, safe, caring spaces where learning can happen at a much higher pace. Well done from everybody from top to bottom. Thank you very much.
So Leslie, who sees these results on our staff? Because, you know, some of these are certificated issues, some of these are classified issues. You know, like, does Bobby Huffman see that this score improved, and does he pass that on to his people?
That is the idea. So we spent
the caring bus driver, right? I mean, that factors into how the child feels about school and how the parent.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yes, we dedicate many alt sessions at this point in the year to talking about LCAP, and the first one launched last week in our all alt meeting. So where every single administrator, classified and certificated, was able to pour over the data by goal. So they were able to see all of the quantitative data by goal and all of the qualitative. So every single comment for every single goal and for other. And our administrative team sees it unredacted. So they see all of it. They see the celebrations, they see the hard comments that might even be about themselves or about their team or about anything, because we can only do better when we know everyone's perspective, right? And so reading all of those comments and seeing all of that data, they take that and then they take it back, a redacted version of that back, and can share that with their staff and their teams, and share those celebrations, right? Share the celebrations and then brainstorm about, hey, how can we make sure where we do fall short, that we can make up. Or if that's this person's perspective, we might not think that, but it's theirs, so how can we help their perspective in a different way? And so yeah, that's the intent when it's shared with our principals and alt, that they classified alt, that they're going back and sharing it with their teams as well.
Very good, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much. So is this next one you also? F7, presentation on pilot of instructional materials for creative writing at Ramona High School.
This might sound familiar to you. We brought materials previously for the creative writing class, but after the pilot of those materials, the teachers decided this was not the text for them. So as we've talked about before, they take the review of instructional materials very seriously, and if it's not something that's going to work for the course of study, or for the students of Ramona Unified, they don't bring it forward for approval. So they went back to the drawing board, went back to look at other texts, and are bringing this as an information item for the board for English creative writing course, which was adopted in January of 2023. They have Writing Fiction 10th edition and Tell It Slant 3rd edition, and just with all of our pilots, it'll be available. It is available in the hallway. It's been added to the instructional materials survey. It will go to school site council, and it will go through all of the same processes before it is brought back to the board for approval. In if they're going to pilot in fall of 2024, we'll probably bring it back in January or February. Kind of depends on how the pilot goes.
Okay.
And this is an information item.
This is strong evidence that our teachers are willing to put in the hard work and not take the easy route. And they're, you know, another example of their dedication to the craft. So I commend them, and I look forward to hearing what their thoughts are on these books.
Thank you.
On the Tell It Slant book, I've read into it pretty far. It's a different angle. It's new. It's fresh. It's really interesting. The title Tell It Slant is different. Tell It Slant. Well, the book is different. What the book is talking about is if you have to write nonfiction, do it in an interesting way. And that's what this book is all. Tell it slant in a different way. It's a nice concept.
Very good. Okay, item F8, approval of revisions to English learner reclassification criteria.
I will be bringing Rob and Aaron back up to address the board this evening for, and to tell you about the revisions that we have for our English learner reclassification criteria.
Thank you.
Hello again. Our English learners are identified through an assessment that measures their English language proficiency. And if it's deemed by the assessment, the LPAC, the initial LPAC, that they need English language development support, then they are identified as an English learner student, and then they are provided with English language development instructional support. However, when a student progresses through the process of developing their English language proficiency, we are required to reclassify them. And we have reclassification criteria that must be board approved, and it also needs to follow the state of California's basic criteria. So there are 4 basic criteria, and that is if the student achieves a level 4 on the summative LPAC, we must consider them for reclassification. One of the changes, that's the way it's been for many years, and that's already been approved in the past. One of the new additions to that, though, is that the state of California has a new alternate summative LPAC for our students with the most significant cognitive disabilities. And so that assessment has only a 3 performance level score. So our recommendation was to add any student who has earned a level 3 on the summative alternate LPAC should also be required for consideration to reclassify. And then the second criteria is how do the students perform compared to their non-English learner peers. That has not changed at all. The third criteria is teacher input and evaluation. And the state of California is adopting, starting next year, it's required, but it's already out this year for use and practice, what they call an OPTEL tool, or it's an observational tool that teachers will have to use. Next year, it's going to be required for all reclassifications, so we're just moving it ahead a little bit so that we can be ahead of the game, but also we can start training our school sites on this tool. It's very closely aligned to what we already use right now, which is our proficiency level descriptors, but now there's just a new structure to it, so that is the other change to the existing form. And then the fourth criteria is parent consultation required for the process to reclassify. And so all of our processes are pretty much the same, but those 2 changes, the addition of the summative alternate LPAC, level 3, and then also going to the OPTEL tool. Any questions?
Questions?
Nope.
No. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Item F8, approval of revisions to course of study, general physical education for grade 7. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. We just need to have that.
Oh, discussion, right, okay. So, yeah, let me see here.
I'll
What are
move
we
for approval.
approving?
The reclassification criteria.
Reclassification criteria. Is that your motion, Darren?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
I'll second
All in favor?
Aye.
That carries unanimously. All right, thank you. Okay, now item F9, and that is approval of revisions to course of study, general physical education for grade 7.
Governing board, I believe this is some exciting news we have tonight. Our middle school principal and her relationships with the PE teachers and with her staff has been able to determine that in their instructional minutes, they and with the support of the physical education teachers help will be moved back to or into physical education at middle school. That means that for F9, this course of study is a revision to what was previously approved with the addition of the health standards. That now means there is not there will not be moving forward an elective class for health that would impact all of those electives that we discussed before, and it will not be a part of beginning bands any longer for the students who become physical education, which means their entire band will not be interrupted.
That makes so much more sense.
It is
I mean, you might have noticed I typically don't provide pause during board meetings, but yes, that is one that we would. So,
This is a discussion possible action item to approve the general physical education for grade 7, including the health standards.
thank you.
I'll second.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is for the superintendent, I believe, or maybe Mr. Newman. Is this move subject to meet and confer?
I'm
Quite
seeing heads
understand
shaking no.
the question.
Is this move to, and the expectation to have the PE teachers deliver this, subject to meet and confer?
Good question. I don't think so, especially with it coming from them.
Thank you.
Great question.
And once we do this, is it permanent?
Until it isn't.
Love to say yes. I'm going to say yes.
Okay, all right. Is there anything that would cause us to change this?
I don't believe so, only if something were to change in legislation around health. Currently, we can put health in any course, and you don't have to have a specific health credential. It aligns to our PE credentials because there are some health components put into the physical education standards. And the state could decide something different. But
Okay.
as far as our foreseeable future, I don't think we're gonna have any changes. With the teachers.
Okay, all in favor?
I just
Aye.
had
Aye.
Sorry. Did you respond?
I had a comment.
Okay, so right now our vote is for, and you are holding, are you a yes or a no? And you can still ask your question after, it's all right, unless your answer will affect your vote.
It's not, I just had a comment. I can
Okay.
say it afterwards.
All right, so are you a yes?
No.
Okay, so that carries 4-1. All right, and my question?
I just had a comment that I'm really excited now. It's now moved from band to PE, and I'm all for it. And I wish I could bifurcate the issue of voting on the standards and curriculum and the fact of moving it from one subject to another. I wish I could bifurcate it, and then I would be, but still, what I voting things the same, things that are not always in line with exactly health. A lot of those are issues I was speaking up.
Right.
So things don't.
Thank you. Noted. All right, item F10, approval of revisions to course of study beginning band for grade 7.
Yes, same thing, yes. F10 is requesting your action on taking band back to the original band class and removing those health standards. This is a discussion possible action item.
Thank you, Roger. Any questions about this? All in favor?
Aye.
Carries unanimously. Thank you. Yes,
We
we
will.
will. Okay, moving through to section G, human resources. Our first item to address is G2, which is, Brian, are you ready on this one? Who's reading this read? Oral summary of compensation for the Assistant Superintendent of Administrative Services. Is it you, Tony? Okay, who's doing it?
I'll do it.
Thank you.
I read the employment agreement, correct? On G2, okay. So this matter is held in open session at a regular meeting of the governing board in accordance with the Brown Act. Government Code Section 45953, Subdivision C, Item 3, states that prior to taking final action on executive compensation, the board must orally summarize the recommendation for final action on the salary, compensation, and/or fringe benefits that will be considered. A summary of the compensation provisions in the proposed assistant superintendent's contract is as follows. The term of this contract is from March 25th, 2024 through June 30th, 2026. The assistant superintendent's salary for the 23-24 school year shall be grade 33, step 1 of the management confidential salary schedule, which would total $161,096 annually in the 23-24 school year for a full year of service, meaning July 1 through June 30, and shall be prorated for the term of the contract. Item number 2, the assistant superintendent shall be afforded the health and welfare benefits granted to the district's other administrative personnel on the same terms and condition. Item number 3, for local business related travel within San Diego County, the assistant superintendent shall receive a mileage stipend of $295.80 monthly. Reimbursement for mileage and traveling outside San Diego County shall be paid in accordance with board policy. Item number 4, the assistant superintendent shall be entitled to 5.25 days of vacation with pay for the period beginning March 25th, 2024 through June 30th, 2024. The assistant superintendent is entitled to all paid legal holidays as defined in section 37220 of the Education Code, as well as those holidays declared by the Board of Education as local holidays.
Okay, thank you for that information. Our next item is G3, and that is approval of employment agreement between Ramona Unified School District and the Assistant Superintendent of Administrative Services. This is an action item.
Members of the board, as just summarized by Mr. Drum, we are presenting for your approval Tori Long as the new Assistant Superintendent of Administrative Services. Her contract is attached to that agreement, and it was just summarized, but we are recommending approval.
Thank you. All right, any questions?
I move to approve.
Thank you. All right, now any questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, that carries unanimously. Welcome. Thank you for being here. So, do you want to introduce yourself? I think you're probably the one person in the room that everybody doesn't already know, right? All right, now Brian, did you want to say anything about Tori?
Absolutely. I'm going to speak a little bit in my superintendent's report, but we just want to welcome you, Tori. We're so excited that you chose us and that you chose to go through the process, and Ramona Unified is very fortunate to have you join our team tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Before we move on to our next item, I think it's probably time to take 5. We lost Dan Summers for, I think, a bathroom break, so let's take 5 right now, and then we'll resume our meeting. Thank you. looks like we are all back. Dan, we took a little break between items so that you wouldn't miss anything important.
Instigated it.
It was my plan to break before we got to the next section anyway, so very good. All right, we are still on section G, human resources, resuming at 9:16. Item G4 is approval of revised extracurricular salary schedule to include girls head coach flag football, girls head and JV coach flag football, girls assistant varsity coach flag football. Okay. Some flag football coaches.
Yes, members of the board, Mrs. Rodriguez would like to spend one more night out than she already does. And so is proposing that Ramona High School adopt girls flag football. We are excited to offer this sport. It has started all throughout San Diego County in various places. We will be joining that this next year. In applying the conditions that are already in place, the stipends for this are proposed as a B for the head flag football, a C for the JV flag football, and a D for assistant varsity flag football. This is simply applying the MOU that is in place with RTA. But we are asking for recommendation or approval to approve the revised extracurricular salary schedule with those 3 additions.
I don't know what that means exactly.
The what? That's all we're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. So does this put these salaries like at the same as regular football? Is it as is it how many years of experience the coaches have?
It's not experience, but levels. You can see under the third page. There's Class A includes sports like football, soccer, wrestling, and then there are some other sports under B: cross country, swim, tennis, golf, and then head flag football for girls. So it's with probably about half of the sports are B. The other half are A, and it depends upon the criteria.
Oh, I see that it's on the second page.
Yeah, the number of athletes, there's a rubric that you apply, how much equipment, how many practices, how many events, and when you apply that, it ended up as a B. That
Got it.
potentially could change,
Right.
right? If as this sport develops, you might get more girls, you might get more competitions, and it might eventually move to an A, but currently it's projected as a B, applying the criteria.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
All right,
Just
have
thought
the
I just
coach-
needed to scroll to the next page and look at it sideways.
Question, have the coaches been hired?
We're in the process of hiring them, yes.
Oh, cool.
We put that out, but we didn't hire them until this becomes approved. We do not. Yeah, it has not been taken off. Hopefully, it might come back.
Right.
I have a quick question. What time of the year would we anticipate this sport to be played?
It's a fall sport.
Okay?
It will be, we'll have to share the stadium with them, and they get a lot of the same, well, they should be getting the same cheerleaders, and other pieces. That part is true as well. So, but yeah, it's a fall sport.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll find out. It seems to be very popular
What else is
across the
fall?
county.
Tennis and cross country?
Cross country, tennis, volleyball.
Okay. Between the both? Mm-hmm.
The boys are gonna play on Friday afternoon and Friday night. When would this be scheduled? Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you. We did get a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, item G5, initial proposal from Ramona Unified School District to Ramona Teachers Association for 2024-2025 successor agreement.
The current collective bargaining agreement between RTA and RUSD expires June 30th, 2024. This attached proposal is for the district to open negotiations for a successor agreement, and this is for informational item. We do have intentions of bringing the RTA's proposal to the next school board meeting in April, which then would mean we can start negotiations after that date. But this is our initial proposal to RTA.
Thank you. All right, at this point, I will open the public hearing.
That's
Oh.
the next one.
Oh,
This
yes.
was just the information.
Didn't
then-
you just give the info?
Yeah, you want to, but yes.
Do you want to give us more info?
No, you can
Okay.
go ahead.
Public hearing is open on the initial proposal from Ramona Unified School District to Ramona Teachers Association for 2024-2025 successor agreement negotiations. All right, public hearing is open. That means that anybody can come forward and speak to the board even without an orange speaker slip. No one wants to come talk to us about this. All right, hearing is now closed. Thank you. And the last part of this, do you want to introduce it?
Approving the proposal.
All right, so this is an action item. Motion?
I'll move approval.
Thank you. Second? Thank you, Maya. All in favor?
Aye.
That carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, we are now in section H, administrative services. Our first item to address is H5, presentation and approval of second reports.
That's this big boy. Yeah, thanks.
Welcome. Thank you for coming in tonight.
Good evening, President Perfect, members of the board, Dr. Thurman, Cabinet. Thank you for having me here to present our second interim financial report. So as you guys know, school districts are required by Ed Code to file 2 interim reports throughout the year. This will be our second interim. It encompasses actual expenses from July 1st through January 31st and projects financial activity through June 30th of this year. There's 3 certifications. Positive, a district will meet its financial obligations. Qualified, a district may not meet its financial obligations. And negative, a district will be unable to meet its financial obligations for the remainder of the current year or the subsequent fiscal year. I will be recommending a positive certification for our second interim. So these are the planning factors that we use for our second interim report. We get these from multiple sources, the San Diego County Office of Ed, California Department of Education, as well as some more unique ones that are pertinent to us and the trends that we see here. The most important thing to note on this, the biggest change from first interim, is the fiscal year 24-25's COLA, which is at 0.76% for the coming year. That's down from 3.94% when we did first interim, so that's substantial. Here's our enrollment data. As you guys know, we are experiencing declining enrollment like most school districts in California. This year we did only lose 5 students, which is usually we lose 50, so that was good. That was a good indicator for us. Result of that, as you can see here, the ADA, which is directly off of enrollment, is also decreasing. We did actually see an increase from first interim to second interim for our ADA this year, which in my short time here, I've never seen any positive information related to ADA or enrollment, so that was kind of nice. But as you can see, it is still sloping downwards for the coming years. Here's our UPP numbers. We did get our certified numbers back on February 20th, I believe. So we had 3,125 unduplicated pupil count for this year. So we're seeing those numbers, that increase that we saw last year, we are seeing that continue. You can see in the out years, though, we are still budgeting conservatively and projecting these numbers a little bit more conservatively than what we're seeing. All right, so here's an overview of the unrestricted general fund. You can see the original budget, first interim and second interim. The change is from the original budget to second interim. We'll get into the differences between the revenues and expenditures in the next slides. You see we got a change of 1.1 in revenues and a larger increase of 3.3 in expenditures. One interesting thing to note on this slide is at first interim we had a significantly decreased contribution due to utilizing an early intervention preschool grant for some of our SPED paraeducators. The collective bargaining agreements essentially ate that up, but we are still projecting a slightly lower contribution at second interim than we were at the original budget. So here's a breakdown of the revenues. As you can see, the largest increase is our LCFF sources. This has to do with our UPP numbers going up. We budgeted conservatively last year on our projections, so this year actually realizing those increase in UPP numbers. This is the impact that it has on our revenues. Other local revenue, those are mostly donations and income accounts that we operate. One of the larger ones was the Daryl Cheeley donation that Mount Woodson received this year. So here we have the expenses. So this is interesting in the sense that normally we don't settle our collective bargaining agreements till after second interim. So here we actually get to see the impact of two things, the new collective bargaining agreements as well as the typical trimming of vacant positions that we do at second interim. So it sort of mitigates the impact of the CBAs a little bit. You can see in the certificated classified salaries and employee benefits, the increases there. We actually have a decrease in employee benefits. This is from removing some positions that we no longer have as well as trimming the vacants. You can see the increase in books and supplies from the original budget to first interim. There's a significant increase there. That is carryover. That is typical for first interim. The second increase is the vacant positions. When we trim them out of these salaries, we then move them out into materials and supplies, and that's why you see that increase there. Services and other operating expenses, we're actually looking really good. This is, I mean, pretty precise, so that's actually a good number. You can see capital outlay, those are our large projects that we've been involved in this year, including the Barnett fencing projects and the multiple large roofing projects. This is an overview of the restricted side of the budget. You can see here we have a $2.7 million increase in revenues. This is mostly due to the receiving the second apportionment of the arts and music discretionary block grant, as well as expenditures of $5.8 million increasing. This is two things, carryover, and then also the impact of the collective bargaining agreements, as well as when we receive the revenue from that second part of the arts and music grant, we had to budget the expense side as well, even though we won't be using all of those funds this year, but when you receive the funds, it's just the nature of how we receive them. It has to be put in there. You can also see the contribution on this side as well. Overall, we see the ending fund balance there at 3.1 million is the increase in what we're expecting to decrease our ending fund balance for the restricted side of our budget. This is our multi-year projection. This takes into account all the factors from our LCFF, all the factors from enrollment and ADA, including that 0.76% COLA, which has a dramatic effect going forward. One thing to note is, as you can see in the commitments at the bottom, going forward, those commitments are going to get a lot smaller as we feel the cost pressures of that 0.76% COLA, but we still are projecting to have a positive ending fund balance for this year and the next 2 out years. With that, we recommend that the board approve the fiscal year 23-24 second interim financial report with a positive certification.
Pretty healthy.
Okay.
Any questions?
All right. Yes, Roger.
I don't see a negative COLA happening, but I don't see it moving far from that 0.76% myself. There's been talk of it getting closer to 1%. There's been other more optimistic talk that I'm not really prescribing to myself. I don't see it going negative, no. Yeah.
Okay, yes, Darren.
If we could go to the slide for the, it's number 7 on our presentation, on our printout. It's unduplicated pupil count. the number of 3,125, we see that go up. What is that a percentage of our total student count, and why is that significant?
It's 60%, and it's significant because it qualifies us for additional funds from the state, which we will be receiving in the coming year. It's concentration funding. It's going to be this upcoming year, the amount's a little over $1 million that we'll expect to see as an increase to our LCFF funds due to that.
Okay.
So it is very helpful in considering the rest of the fiscal environment that we're looking at. That's definitely a positive indicator. And we're budgeting conservatively, but we do expect obviously to see those numbers maintain that way, so.
Okay. And then if we could go the next slide, with the second interim unrestricted general fund revenues. I see expenditures went up 3,368,868. What do we attribute that increase in expenditures to?
Two things. It's carryover of some of our donation accounts at the first interim. We moved those over. And then also the collective bargaining agreements are a big chunk of that as well. Obviously, when we have those costs go up, the revenues aren't going to go up accordingly. So those were about 2.1 million alone.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other questions? Anything?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, very good. All right, so this is an action item. The action would be to approve the second interim report.
I'll
Roger,
second.
thank you. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, the next item, approval of thank you very much.
Good job, Daniel.
Nicely
Yep,
done.
Daniel, well done, thank you. All right, approval of resolution number 2023-2024-10 to update committed fund balances in accordance with Governmental Accounting Standards Board Statement 54 and Board Policy 3100.
For President Perfect, members of the board, we've talked about this before. It sort of gives a summary of where some of these funds are going. I would open the floor for any questions regarding these, and I would ask Daniel's help with these, but we've had discussions. These are very similar categories to what you've seen in the past 2 years. Nothing too significant changes from the past, but this helps define where a lot of those funds are going. So, open any questions?
No questions? This is an action item. Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Maya. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That carries unanimously. All right, our next item is 7, and that's presentation and approval of transportation plan per Ed Code 39800.1.
Thank you, President Perfect, and members of the board and community. This is a transportation plan. We call it an update because it's a new year. However, there are no changes whatsoever to the transportation plan itself. We have some updated general information for you on numbers of buses, employees, some of the costs, total miles, those kind of things. However, the policy itself has not changed. So we'll start here with the number of vehicles. We're at 12. Last year we were at 16. So we had some that have been surplused and have at least one new diesel bus. We still have our 7 electric buses. Another piece of interesting information under the routes, 241,000 total miles. Last year was closer to 200,000 miles, so a little bit of an increase there. So we'll go through these. I'm not going to read every slide to you. Like I said, the plan is no different in how we're prioritizing unduplicated students. So what I will go over though with this next page is these, just real quick, the funds. The one I want to draw your attention to is the very bottom, 697,000 of the 23-24 proposed reimbursement is what we saw last year. And this next slide will show that that is the amount that we received for this year, that we received this year. And then we'll talk about what we're looking at for next year. So there's a lot of the details there that we went over this exact slide last year. But as we move forward here, you'll see that 23-24 reimbursement. We did receive these funds, 697,000. The formula for predicting what we will receive from here on involves taking that number of the reimbursement from last year and adding the COLA to it. So what we're projected for next year is $702,812 that we had not received prior to last school year. And a brief explanation for how this works is on the third bullet there. Again, this is an exact slide from last year with just a little bit of add-on here on this third bullet. Enhanced funding will be an increase to the district's LCFF as an add-on. RUSD receives funds equivalent to the current add-on plus ongoing COLA. So you saw the add-on this last year was the 697,000 plus the COLA of 0.76, so that's why our new projected reimbursement will be 702,000. So I won't read all of those to you. Another important piece of the presentation, whoops, sorry, going forward. Oh, here we go. Is this last bullet of those four. Again, these are the same from last year, but the Ed Code 39800.1 requires the districts to solicit stakeholder engagement for the original plan, which we did, and those dates are listed here. So, however, we are planning to take the current transportation plan and run it through our administrative team and our parent groups as well, just to get their input on how things have been going. But it's not a current requirement before this is approved, nor is it a requirement per Ed Code for these particular funds. So we'll continue through here, more details of what the Ed Code promises or states regarding these funds. Again, absolute no change from what we had done before. This next one has some very small print, but again, this is the only thing that changed on top is the original one said 22-23 to 23-24. So this is the proposed plan for this coming school year. So we'll move on. The plan description. And these three questions are the key pieces of the transportation plan. Talking about the services that we provide, a description of how our services will be accessible to pupils with disabilities and homeless children and youth, and then how unduplicated pupils will access the available home to school transportation at no cost to the pupils. So we modified the registration process last year. It was a significant effort to streamline the application process, the registration process, so that when families do their free and reduced lunch application, that is only done once and not have to happen for various departments with food services and with transportation, so we can use that information from the original time they enter that. Moving down, continued areas here, this does show the priority of how we select students to ride the bus if we need to do that, and that again hasn't changed. Students in grades TK through 6 residing in households with an income level of at or below low income threshold are the highest priority, and then from there it goes to the foster youth, homeless, and English learners, and then to students in grades TK through 6 with an income level that is above the low income threshold, and then we move into 7-12, but that's because the priority has to be for our TK 6 students. So again, unchanged from last year. These are the costs that we proposed last year. These are the costs for 22-23, or 23-24, sorry. And then we have the 24-25 costs. So any questions on those costs? We're right to the end of this. This next slide just includes the dates of the original plan on when that was all reviewed by our community and parents, DAC, District Advisory Council, DLAC, and the administrative leadership team, and then we have dates of when we'll review those again to get input on how this is going. So any questions? Kelly has stayed here this evening to help answer questions. And
so I see on these last couple of slides, capital outlay, it looks like it took in 5,000, what are we in?
Oh, is that coming?
Capital outlay, 5,000
It's just the
both
same on both
times.
years, right?
Yeah,
Do we
let me check the front
have
first
something?
one.
What would it be?
Whoops.
I mean, capital outlay, and that's such a small amount.
Yeah, and I don't show what we used for that for previous years. Daniel
we
or
didn't.
Kelly? Capital outlay
Oh,
on,
sorry.
let me go back here. Just this, the 6500 series there. Do we know what
Yeah,
that?
so we actually don't have any capital outlay, because capital outlay is any item over $5,000. So 2 years ago, we had a bunch of it, because we had the electric bus fleet purchased. Last year, we didn't, transportation didn't buy any new buses or anything like that. So we don't normally budget any big new equipment up there for them, which is why normally we commit funds when we're gonna buy buses, because it's not just gonna be a part of their normal budget.
Is this placeholder?
Essentially, yes. I mean, those numbers can be moved around for what needs, well, not the salaries, but the other pieces can be moved around. So the services and the fuel and supplies, we know those are coming, so I budget those, and I just use CPI increases to show what it should do in the next coming years. Capital outlay, we're not really certain if it's gonna be there, but yeah, essentially it's just a placeholder.
Okay, and I know that somewhere I see that we're setting aside money for battery replacement, but it's not on here, it's on the item before this, right?
Yeah, that's on components of ending fund balance.
So we don't include that in transportation
So those
reporting?
components of ending fund balance are actually things that are not actually in the budget, right? So we have that extra money there, and we're saying this is what we're gonna use it for if the need comes. So it doesn't actually get built into the budget.
So it won't go here, cause we're
Yeah.
not actually planning to buy them yet?
Not until a battery explodes on us, then, we'll have that money there for it.
Placeholder.
Thanks for the drama, we
Sorry.
needed that. Okay. All right, I didn't have any other questions. Anyone else? Yes.
How many more electric buses do we need to buy to become sufficient transition from gas buses to
I think we've had a little reprieve, right? There's a bit of a delay.
The current issue is range and storage, so taking
I have
football
a
team-
question. I have a question.
Yeah.
Are we obligated by the state to buy electric buses, yes or no?
we are, and I thought it was by 2030.
I think that got pushed off, but I'm not sure. Is there anyone in the room that knows?
We're receiving
you
our,
did not get a yes or a no, I realize.
Well, there was not a yes or a no answer.
Correct.
Yeah.
yeah, that's a great point, there isn't.
Okay. Any other questions?
Nope.
All right, thank you. This is an action item. Thank you, Daniel.
I'll move approval.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Thank you, Maya. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That carries unanimously. All right, our next item, 8, approval of acceptance of gifts.
Yes, President Perfect, members of the board and community, please see item H8 with various donations and gifts to the district. Some have occurred before, others are relatively new, but please review those. Let us know if you have any questions about any of these gifts.
Thank you. The gifts from the county library are interesting. They're very specific.
Yes, they are.
Okay, thank you. All right, this is an action item. Would anyone like to move approval of accepting these gifts? Thank you, Roger.
I'll second.
Thank you, Dan. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
That carries unanimously. Thank you very much. I see that the anonymous donor is following some students through our district, and it's very generous and kind of them. Okay. Section I, District Operations. Our next item to address is a summary of general obligation bonds. This is an information item only. I understand we have a guest with us tonight. Brian,
Yes,
would you
we
like to
do.
introduce?
Yes, this is Mr. Dale Scott. He's coming to us from Cajon Valley School District tonight, where he was presenting, and came up here. He's already been at one board meeting tonight, so this is his second one. And Mr. Scott has a presentation for us here regarding some general information on bonds. He is an industry expert in this field, so I know he will be open to any questions, concerns, comments, anything regarding this material. The other part of what he will present to us is the process for applying to the San Diego County Taxpayer Association and the presentation that goes with that. There's a lot of background work that Dale is very familiar with, and so he'll explain that process to us as well.
So Brian, before Dale launches, we had a special meeting recently where we talked about CTE facilities. And I think the board had questions about how we might pay for such thing if we were going to. Is this why we have Mr. Scott here today?
Very good question. Yes, using taxpayer funded fundraising vehicles is a product that is available for the district to use. Mr. Scott's very versed in these types of products, and he's going to provide some information about that tonight.
Okay. And so Daniel couldn't work any magic in our budget to make this happen without
Not
this
yet, not
kind
yet.
of action.
We're
All right.
hoping, but
We got confidence in you.
All right, thank you.
thank you, Dale.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. So I swear I'm not going to do 3 board meetings tonight. This is it. I'm going to take you just one quick commercial about the firm, and then I'm going to try to get into the details about what you might consider doing and how you consider putting together a general obligation bond, which you all know requires getting on the ballot and getting public approval, voter approval, in order to raise significant funding for facilities and equipment and so on. Our firm is I'm going to turn to slide 2. Our firm's a public financial advisory firm. We're registered with the SEC. We work primarily with California school districts and college districts. The joke I always tell is when people say, do you only work in California? I say, that's like saying, do you only work in France? It's a very big state. It's an enormous number of districts. You can see on this slide, I just gave a quick capsule. Over the past decade, we've done 100 successful general obligation and parcel tax elections across the state. We work a great deal in San Diego. I've listed a number of the clients that we work here in San Diego County, and then of course statewide. I tried to show a few districts that share some of your demographic characteristics, but we really work, I think a couple of years ago we had an item on the ballot on the Mexican border and an item on the ballot on the Oregon border at the same time. So we work on a statewide basis. What have I learned from all of that? On slide 3, I think especially for your district, in order to be successful, and of course you've had a couple of unsuccessful attempts, but I think in order to be successful, here is what I believe has to happen. I believe that you need to place a measure on the presidential ballot, and I'll talk a little bit about that as we go forward. I believe that you should be doing a voter survey, and I've changed my mind on this since I started talking to the few board members and to the superintendent. I think it's very important to get a sense of where your voters are thinking and what projects they are, if any, that they would be supportive of. And I just think that's a good use of funds rather than all of the money it costs to put an item on the ballot to get a sense, is this going to work or not? I would say in most of the districts we work in, we do a voter survey. They're in the right conditions being that you have a significant number of voters. They're fairly predictive. So I feel fairly, I feel fairly good that by doing a survey, we'd have a good sense of whether it makes sense to proceed, and also a good sense of what the voting population would support and wouldn't support. And so I think that's important. Third, I think it's important that you have unanimous support of the board. I think that's a critical component. Here's why. In many districts, I don't think that's so important. I think in many districts, the voters simply, they don't know if there's a 4-1 vote. It just doesn't register. But in your community, having had a number of failures, I think it's important that you show solidarity going forward. I think that the message of a no vote to an undecided voter is difficult, because they're saying, gosh, this is a person that's on the inside. What do they know that I don't know? And why did they vote against this? So it gives them an opportunity to question what might be support. Four, obviously, I think you need to listen to the community. I think that's critical. And five, I think you need to convey and communicate to them how you're going to finance this if it's approved, how much it would cost them, over how long, what are the taxpayer safeguards that are put into place, and make sure they have a really good understanding of what it is that they're voting for, and I'll talk a little bit about that as well. There's a sixth that I didn't add here, and that is, I think it's important that you have, especially in a presidential election, that you have very, very tight, critical, well-drafted ballot language. The ballot language of I assume you all know what it is, but it's the 75 words or less. That's the ballot that the person reads, and it's the question, shall blah, 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 support blah, 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 yes or no. Those words are often the only words that a voter sees on a bond measure. Not all of them, but many, that's what they will make their decision on, is those 75 words. And so having those 75 words carefully selected, and not just because they worked in some other community, but they work with your voters and the type of voters that are in this community, I think is critical. And I think we're very good at that, frankly. I think we're very, very good at putting those words together. Page 4, I put together, you've seen this before, I assume. You have had 6 elections. None of them succeeded. 3 of them required a 2/3 vote. That was before the law changed in 2001. I think it's interesting, if you run your finger down the election date, there was only one election that was on a presidential ballot. I think that's right. Yes, 2012. November 6, 2012, you got 50.6%. The ones to really look at are those bottom 3, the 55% elections. March of '02 was a presidential primary. November 16 was a presidential election. November 14 was a gubernatorial election. I'll talk about why I think that's important in a second. Well, I'll talk about why I think that's important right now. On the next slide. This slide, which I think is important, especially for you, is voter turnout for San Diego County. Now, we don't have it to the level of just this area. But you can see, these are broken down by presidential, gubernatorial, primary, and then, of course, the recall election. And it measures the percent of registered voters that voted. And we all often think of an election being the same. What's an election? And all the voters come and vote, and everybody comes to vote in every election, but that's just not the case, and the elections are not equal at all. Look at the November 20, which was a presidential election. San Diego County had over 80% of the voters turn out, of the registered voters turn out to vote. Now let's jump forward to the gubernatorial primary in June of 22. 35% voted, roughly 35%. In the gubernatorial election of 22, less than 60% voted. Why is that important? Because the fiscally conservative voter, and I'm saying this broadly, the fiscally conservative voter tends to vote in every election. Now, you have a lot of fiscally conservative voters. I get that. But those people that are significantly consider themselves fiscal conservatives tend to vote in every election. The person who would be less conservative on fiscal matters tends to have a spottier election record. They tend to only show up in the major elections, like the presidential election. And frankly, to pass a general obligation bond pretty much anywhere, you need those people. You need those people, you need all the people to come to the polls, not just the people that vote all the time, but even the people that say, hey, I'm just going to vote in this election. Now, why that's important is not just Dale's opinion. Why that is important is the data. There's a lot of data here, but I'll sum it up very quickly. What I've put together here is a slide that shows the number of California community college and school district bond measures that were on the ballot and what percentage of them passed. The yellow are the presidential elections. The not yellow, the white, are the gubernatorial elections. So this is not including the primaries. This is not including the recalls, the off cycles. And if you look down at the bottom, you can see that statewide, since the year 2001, 91% of the elections on the presidential ballot passed. In the gubernatorial ballot, that number went down to 81%. If you look at this, if we pulled it deeper and we looked at the primary elections, which you were on one primary election, that number drops to about 65%. There was just a primary election in the state of California. That number was about 50% on that number. So you want to be on that presidential ballot, in my opinion. Let me turn to the 2024 election, and I'll try to keep this brief. What this very colorful slide shows is how bonds are typically put together. Typically. That is, you have a $60 tax rate per election. So you can see on the left-hand side, it goes up to $60. This is a graphic on the left-hand side. This is a graphic of tax rates. The bonds are typically amortized over a 25 or 30-year period. They're often issued in what are called series. So in this case, we have $96 million that has been authorized, and then the district draws on those over any number of years. Each one comes with its own interest rate. And the taxpayers pay that off over 25 or 30 years. And if you look at the pie chart, you see in this case that $96 million would also include almost $80 million of interest. That's in roughly today's interest rates. This is what you've tried in the past. You've tried it a couple times, and it has not worked. And I think the message is pretty clear that your voters were not in support of this type of financing. So in many districts and in many advisors, when they're faced with that type of situation, or the polling data shows that they don't support that level of taxes, what they attempt to do is then lower the amount of the tax. Say, okay, well then we'll cut it from a $60 tax. In this case, example I gave was a $15 tax. Now what that does is, obviously, it lowers the tax rate to the homeowner and to the property owner, but it also lowers the amount that you can receive because there's less taxes. In this case, that $90 plus million would drop to $24 million. But it doesn't affect the ratio of principal and interest. You still have the same problem. You still have this problem of the bond being amortized over a 25 or 30-year period. And it's been my experience, and this is anecdotal, it's been my experience that in the fiscally conservative districts, there is very often a person who stands up and says, I am not against this district, I am not against these projects, I support this district, but I object to going into debt for 30 years. I do not want my grandchildren paying off this debt. And so this solution, this structure that I'm showing you here, while it solves the problem of the higher tax rate, it doesn't solve the problem of the amortization and the interest. So a third alternative you might consider, and again, we'd test this if we did do a survey, is to pay it off quickly. Now, in this case, I've put it back up to $60, but as you can see, it's not paid, this loan in this case is not paid off, and this is just an example, but it's using your assessed valuation and your numbers. It's not paid off over 25 or 30 years. In this case, it's paid off over 6 years. And you're receiving, in this case, roughly $23 million. And then, of course, if that works, then you could go back to the voters and ask them to pass another bond for the same number of years or longer or shorter. So I think it's a solution that has worked. It works especially well in fiscally conservative districts where you have this certain number of voters that say, I just don't like debt. But they recognize that there has to be something that, that is provided for the school districts that simply the state does not offer. And then finally, I'm going to tell you what has to occur, and it's a pretty short timeline in order to get on that ballot. The planning and structure of that bond, the kinds of discussions we've just been having, what type of bond, how much is the bond, what are the projects that are going to be financed, et cetera, that has to happen now. That really has to start occurring now. If we were to do a survey, we would have survey results available for board review probably by May of this year, and then board action in June of this year. Cutoff in San Diego County to place an item on the ballot is in early August, but you move into July, it gets a little dicey sometimes. So June is about as late as you want to go. And then, of course, election in November. We say election day, but we don't have an election day anymore in this state. We have an election month. It seems to go on forever. But the end of the election month is November 5th. And if it were successful, you would have access to the funds as early as the first quarter of 2025. You don't have to spend them at that time, but that's as early as you would have access. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about the process or about what we do or about anything else.
Okay, that's a lot. Thank you. Who's ready? Roger, you ready? Questions?
I don't really have any questions. I think we've given a pretty good analysis, summary analysis of what we've done in the past that doesn't work, and proposal of what might work. And I'm happy to try it.
So Dale, on the chart on page 4, where our previous attempts were listed, at some point the threshold changed from 2/3 to 55%. Is that our?
That's correct.
That's our threshold now?
55% of the ballots cast.
So it's not 50% plus 1?
No, it's 55%.
Okay, so pretty solid. And there are some costs for the district along the way.
There are.
Would you be willing to outline those?
Sure.
Thank you. So I'm looking at page 11 where you kind of have a timeline, right?
Sure. The costs work something like this. If we were engaged and you agreed to do a survey, we would undertake that survey. That cost of that survey is $15,000 plus expenses. The expense is mostly the collection expense in order to get the people to take the survey. That is payable upon delivery of the survey to the district. So if you change your mind in the middle, or we come back to you and we say we just can't get enough people to take the survey, then we throw the results away and don't charge you. In order to get on the ballot, assuming the survey results are positive, that's a big assumption, by the way, assuming the survey results are positive, and assuming that we have all of the other pieces of the puzzle that I talked about in this presentation, then there would be a resolution that comes to the board for action. That resolution has a lot of work behind it. we'd have to bring a law firm in. I'll talk about them in just a second. There's a fair amount of analysis has to go into the numbers, the drafting of the language, the drafting of the project list, a whole host of pieces of the puzzle that have to be put together. That cost, assuming you pass the resolution, the cost of that is $15,000, and that goes to our firm. If you don't pass the resolution, and I'll talk about that threshold in just a second, if you don't pass the resolution, then we don't charge you. However, I'm sorry, let me talk about the law firm. We would also want to bring a law firm on to assist with that. Their cost for that would be minimal, I believe. They're not doing much except, in that case, they're just drafting the resolution, and it's not a huge number. But they are specialists in that, and that's why it's important that you have the right firm. The next, and I think most significant expense, which I don't have a good feel for the number on, I'm afraid, and that is the cost to the county. The county will charge you for placing this issue on the ballot, just like they charge the district for when you run for office. The fact that you have some members of the board that will be on the same ballot will actually lower that cost. But I don't have a good sense of what that fee to the county is, but I would guess it is going to be somewhere north of $20,000. That would be my guess, and it could be much higher. That depends, by the way, on how many items are on the ballot, because they take the total cost and they divide it among all those parties. So if you are on a special election, you're getting killed because you're one of the only people that's going to, it's the same amount of money, it's the same amount of voters, it's the same amount of work. It's just how thin do you slice the bread? That's really all it is. And so that's why it goes up and down. So the presidential ballot is definitely the cheapest, even though it doesn't feel that good, but it is. Those are the costs up until the date of the election. And by the way, the county requires that you pay that regardless of whether you win or not. If you do win, you can typically reimburse your cost out of the bond for that because it's an essential cost. Then if you're fortunate enough to win, all of the real work begins. I know that sounds counterintuitive because it seems like the real work is winning, but the work is getting those bonds into the market in a way that is acceptable to the credit markets. There's a great deal of disclosure, a great deal of structuring. It's a fairly long and involved process. It involves a great number of professionals, underwriters, rating agencies, lawyers, our firm as financial advisor, et cetera, et cetera. Those fees can easily run, depending on the size of the, and underwriters, which are the people that actually sell the bonds. Those fees can run easily 2-3% of the amount issued. Of course, it depends on how much you issue and when and how often. But all in, they can easily be over $100,000 if you're issuing, let's say, $10, $15 million. And those costs are contingent, again, on the sale of the bond. And to be clear, most of these costs, with the exception of the two pieces the one piece I talked about in the beginning, the survey, can be reimbursed out of the bond issue itself. It does not come out of the general fund. Obviously, if you don't pass the bond, there are no bonds to sell, so there are no costs for the sale of the bonds. So it's like a mortgage. I assume many of you have a mortgage, and when you get that mortgage, there are certain costs, and the costs of that mortgage are incorporated into the mortgage, so you're not paying it out of pocket. So it's kind of an easier way to think about it.
Okay. Questions?
The only thing is, if we were able to pass along the solar bond, then we want it to be the lowest percentage possible.
Sure.
Because we don't want to be in a situation like that.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about that. I mean, I'd worry about it, but not in the current situation. The reason is in a general obligation bond for a district like yours, working with our district, it is more than likely that those bonds would be sold through a competitive bid process. So we don't really care who bids on them as long as they're a bona fide underwriter, and whoever has the lowest cost of funds wins the bid. You get into larger, more complicated transactions. Sometimes you have to bring the underwriter on up front, but I don't anticipate that being the issue here.
What's the percentage just for your work on the ballot, on the bond?
If it passes? Yeah, so let me break it down. There are two parts of the puzzle. One is pre-election, before the election happens.
Does your firm charge something pre-election?
So before the election are the two pieces of the puzzle I talked about, the survey research and the pre-election fee.
Okay.
Okay. Then there's post-election. Post-election is when you're selling the bonds. We don't charge by a percentage, we charge on a flat fee basis. Unless the amount goes way down, that fee tends to be roughly $65,000 per issue of bonds. So if you have a $10 million issue, it's $65,000. If you have a $5 million issue, it's $65,000, because it's the same amount of work to get that done regardless. But again, that is only paid if the bond is successful and once you issue the bonds. And I should actually talk about that briefly. There's no requirement in terms of how soon you have to issue those bonds. You might want to take some time. You've been attempting a number of times to pass it without any success. Now you finally pass it. You might want to take some time and actually do a little more analysis on how you're going to spend those funds. That's up to you. That's completely your discretion when you issue those bonds and how much of those bonds you issue.
Does that decision depend on the prime?
No, not really. Not really. It depends on when you are ready to issue the bonds for the facilities and projects that you need. Trying to time it by interest rates, it's hard to do because it takes so much time to get everything together. It's not like you're just pulling a trigger on a day-by-day basis. People have tried it with limited success.
A 5-year bond, and what's the interest rate on 25-year bond?
Today? Because I can't tell you the future. Yeah. Well, the honest answer is I don't know, because I don't know what's going to happen with interest rates at that time. But in the current market, the interest rate for a long-term bond, remember these are tax exempt. Do you know what I mean when I say they're tax exempt? I assume you do. The investor that buys them does not have to pay taxes on the interest, and therefore the interest rates are lower than they would be if they bought a corporate bond or whatever, a loan. So the interest rates on those longer-term loans are currently, they fluctuate, but currently in the low 4% range. The interest rate on the lower, the 5-year and 3-year and 7-year bonds are much lower. They might be in the 2.5% to 3% range at this time. Where that goes in 6 months, 9 months, hard to say. 2 years ago, they were almost free. I mean, they were literally 1%. So things have changed. No, I think it's a good question. There won't be any other unified school district bonds on the ballot, on your ballot, because you're the only unified school district. So you're the only K-12 district. There could be a college district bond, there could be a hospital bond, there could be a state bond, there could be many, no doubt. You would think that would make a difference. You really would, but I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that statistically, that people don't seem to shop for those bonds. They're either supportive, I'm talking about local bonds, not the state bond. They're supportive of local bonds, all of them, or they're not supportive. And if they're going to be supportive, they're going to be more likely to be if they're going to shop, they're going to be more likely to be supportive of their local school district rather than a county-wide or a statewide bond. So I don't think it would have I think the pluses of the presidential election far outweigh the possible negatives of having other bonds on the ballot at the same time.
Darren, we'll
Couple
come back,
comments.
so if you have more, don't worry.
One of the things, I just want to go on record as saying, I think the district has needs. I think that given the right program, that I could support and will support pursuing a bond in this for our district. I don't support asking the voters for money and then telling them how we're going to spend it. I think it's important to come up with a very detailed plan to outline and in order and as a measure of building trust with our community, or building upon the trust that we have in our community, saying this is how we intend to spend the money that we're asking for, and then really having the community hold us to that standard. So I think it's important that we have a detailed plan moving forward. I think we've identified some needs and some. I think we're on needs, not wants. I think we're when we talk about expanding the capabilities of our current CTE programs and the facilities that our CTE programs, improving the ones that they're currently working with, because I think I called them magicians last meeting. They're doing fantastic work with the facilities, and we just have to make some improvements. We have to figure out how to ventilate our labs and some of our other sites. We've talked about a pool, either improvement or a new one with the appropriate locker rooms, and then we have our site needs. So I'm in support of continuing this process. What would our next steps be? And I'm not sure if this question is for the superintendent or for you, Mr. Scott. So you guys, rock, scissors, paper to see who jumps on that one.
Well, I can start just timing wise, per the timeline that we see there, we have an impending decision to make on engaging with an underwriter, and so that can be whether the board chooses to hear from various ones, which would put us out a month or two, or the board makes a decision to engage Mr. Scott in one of our upcoming board meetings. So that's a first step, because that does initiate a survey. It allows the board to see where the community's at. And there's another piece of this that Dale will explain too, bringing the Taxpayer Association along in that
Let's get
process.
through questions. Yeah. Dan?
Yeah, I enjoyed a meeting with Mr. Scott and the superintendent about a week ago. And he pointed out that the 6 previous bonds that we have lost here in Ramona, that there were mistakes made in the presentation of those bonds. Mistakes that we, of course, would not repeat again now. But the language of the proposed bond on the ballot is really essential as to whether or not it passes, how it's presented, and what we are offering as a school district in exchange for the tax. And if we do that right, there's no reason why we can't pass a bond.
Anything else?
Nope.
Okay. Dale, so I had a few questions about the process, right? So at what point and at what cost do campaign activities take place? Is there a campaign committee? Is it the school district that is the campaign committee? Who bears the cost of, you know, the stack of mailers that I had this last time? You know, for one candidate, I literally counted them, an equal number each day in my mailbox from the candidate and his opposition, you know. So do we engage in that, and is that a district expense and a board activity?
Right.
What is that?
No, that's a very good question. Under state law, you as a district cannot advocate for the passage of the bond. You can't spend, I should say, you can't spend any resources of the districts in advocating for those bonds. You as board members can say anything you want. You have the right to do anything, except for putting a piece of paper into the school copier and pushing the button that says, on a piece of paper that says, vote yes on measure, measure G. That's the only thing you can't say. I can't do. The problem with a presidential election, and then in general they're great, but the problem, and it's a double-edged sword, is there's a lot of noise. There's so much information coming out of those elections that it's very difficult to communicate with voters, the voters that you want to communicate with. And that leads people to do either one of two things, and we can make this decision down the line. One is the traditional campaign which you're referring to, the Get Out the Vote campaign, the Yes on Measure H campaign. The problem with that is they're expensive. They're very expensive, and you can't use school funds to fund those. You have 25,000 voters, roughly. That's raising a lot of money to communicate, even with a handful, even a household of those. And so that might not, as attractive as that might be for you, that simply might not be possible. Raising that kind of money, getting those kind of volunteers, I'm not sure. What many districts do, especially in a presidential election, is they do what is called an information campaign. And the information campaign does originate from the school district. It is providing voters and staff and parents information about the bond, which is not advocating that it be passed or not. It's only giving them information about what it'll do, what the cost is, what the projects are, what the percentage is that's required to vote, how do you register to vote. So it's really giving them information to let them make that decision. I think that works well often in a presidential campaign because it's just so hard to reach voters in an advocacy way. I mean, it's so costly to reach voters in an advocacy campaign that you can run it, but you never quite feel that you have the traction. And then one more thing. Advocacy campaigns in the past, and by the past I mean 10, 15 years ago, which many of you have probably done, those involve the get out the vote type of activities. Those are the phone banks, the walks, et cetera, most of that has gone. I mean, people still do it, it just doesn't work as well, partly because nobody answers their phone, partly because nobody wants to knock on a door, and partly because the cost of mail has become so expensive. So we can make that decision, a better decision on that, once we see the survey results, but those are kind of the options, but it's not going to involve the district paying for a campaign. You just simply can't do that.
Okay. So not really a campaign cost to the district? Not anything significant?
Well, you can send out a fair amount of information.
Information?
Yeah, and mail can be expensive. You have a lot of households, but that's up to you, how you communicate with them.
As long as we're providing information on the bond and not lobbying in favor of the bond, then we can use district funds?
Correct. Correct. And it has to be reviewed by council, not just by me telling you, oh yeah, that looks great. I mean, you actually have to have a lawyer look at it and say, yes, this meets standards.
And then at some point, is there a bond oversight committee? And when does that happen, if it does?
Oh, it happens, yes. It is required under state law that the district appoint a citizens oversight committee. That committee is not formed until after the bond passes. It doesn't make any sense to put all these people together and form it in advance of that passage. But once the bond passes and you begin to start wanting to issue the bonds, yes, you then have to form that citizens oversight committee. And there are various regulations about who can be on that committee, who can't be on that committee, what types of people have to be, what types of professions and associations have to be represented. And it's a fairly rigorous process.
Community groups, can they campaign for the bond, individuals, and do we see very much of that happen in this area?
Yes, you do, although not always in favor
Right.
of the bond. But yes, you do see that. They have to follow the same regulations, however, as the Yes campaign. You have to file with the FPPC, the State Fair Political Practices Commission. It's very difficult, again, in a presidential campaign, it's very difficult to reach out and find people that don't agree with you. You know, it's easy to find your friends, but it's very hard to find those people that don't agree with you and communicate with them. But yeah, you see it. And community groups can do that, for or against.
Okay. All right. This side? Roger, did you have anything more at this time?
Well, I think, just time is of the essence. I think we need to talk right now for the report.
Maya, did you have any questions for Dale right now?
No.
Okay. This side? No questions at this time?
I'm good.
Okay, so this is information, not action, but Roger, what would you like to talk about with regard to the information we received?
I think we need to find out what board members are thinking, if they want to move forward or not. And then if we do, if we're in agreement, we need to direct the superintendent, because there's not a lot of time to do this. If we're gonna be putting it on, a ballot for a presidential election that's coming this year, we need to do this pretty quickly if we're gonna do it.
Agreed, and I heard you say that you think moving forward is a good idea. Is that correct?
I do.
Okay.
I do believe that, students in Ramona do not have the same opportunities of learning than students down there. It's mainly because they don't have the resources and the facilities to do it.
You want to take an informal poll?
I don't really want to put anybody on the spot. It may need to digest the information a little bit longer. Obviously, you know, a decision does need to be made fairly quickly, very quickly, actually. So this is information, not an action tonight. Our next action would be to engage with a company like Dale's, maybe another one, is that right? So how do we decide that?
It's up to the board. If the board directs staff to solicit other organizations to hear, then that would have to happen in the next couple months. So that puts this timeline out a couple months. Or if the board directs to hear more from Dale Scott and Company, or that's a board direction. Staff's
2 months is a
available.
long time.
Yeah.
We're under, actually, November 5th. Don't count November as a month.
No.
Just go up to October and we're done.
So Ryan, I don't see that we have time to wait for a decision and even sit on it. We need to decide now. To me, I'm not afraid if a board member says that, I think we need to know what we're doing, because if we don't know now, I just don't see it happening in a month. I guess it could, but we have staff that we are relying on
comfortable with that. I would also like to, ask the superintendent to check with, at least 4 of the Dale Scott and Company clients and see what their experience has been. So if you could reach out to any 4-ish of the, school district listed on page 2 and see what their experience has been, I think that's important. I appreciate Mr. Scott coming here tonight. He's met with you previously. Assuming that, you know, it's a big assumption, but I'm assuming that that you would come back with some, positive reports. And if it's negative, we need to look at those too, and then, make a decision that if we're going to agendize something on with whom we would want to embark upon this journey with, and you know, if we choose to go forward, correct me if I'm wrong. If we do want it on a ballot, our resolution must be a 4-1, correct? 3-2 won't cut it.
Ideally 5-1.
I agree completely. We could choose to move forward with a 4-1, but a 4-1 would be difficult in the milk aisle at Stater Brothers, trying to explain to our friends and neighbors, hey, why doesn't person X support this? Can't tell you. You know, there's some real benefit, not just benefit, importance to a unified effort moving forward, in my opinion.
Can I make a proposal?
Sure.
Since time is of the essence, and this is such an impactful, important issue for this district, waiting a month for another school board meeting to make the decision, I think is,
We need to.
well, my thought was maybe we could have, because of the weight of this issue, that we could have a special school board meeting in 2 weeks. And that during that time, we could, as Darren said, look into the other, interview the other clients of Mr. Scott, and we can ask whatever questions we have and come up with a decision as soon as possible. I don't,
It's possible that we could do that.
Roger, where are you in 2 weeks?
In 2 weeks.
yeah.
I might have to make a call from Hawaii. But I'll be-
Tough
Oh,
life.
Rough.
Really? Wow.
That's
Yeah.
the truth.
We're gonna go late just for you.
Okay.
I'll be in a lieu of-
So, how about this? How about this? We close our conversation for tonight. Board members do their homework, work with the superintendent, ask any questions, gather whatever information is needed. If it seems like we need to meet sooner than a month to formalize a direction, then we will start trying to set a date for a special meeting. Is there any stipulation about this happening in a special meeting? It's okay, right? No rules about that? Okay. I know some things, it's like, oh, it has to happen at a,
Just
you
have
know.
Hold on, or
Yeah.
we could do this. This is what we did in the last 2 laws that we passed. Not passed, but passed to move forward to
Right.
try to pass it. Is we just moved forward and said, we're going to do the first step, which is the survey.
Well, and I think that's what we'll be looking at, right? It's the survey and who's doing the survey.
And then once we got the survey results, then we're like, okay,
Yeah.
based on those, now we make our decision.
Right.
So, to me, that's where we need to put all the hard effort in right now.
Yeah.
And so, we've already heard what it costs. It's not costing any different than we paid last time. We paid $30,000 last time we did that survey.
So what bond amount are we looking at?
I think that still remains to be seen, right? We'd see what the survey, results were. I'm sure that any survey would include a variety of scenarios, for survey respondents to indicate their willingness to engage in a dollar amount or a term.
this is a very different survey because what's being proposed is we're going to find out what the community will support.
Yes.
We didn't do that in the last two surveys. We just sent out general information and got a feel if they would support a bond. That's what it was. And our whole message was, our school district is falling apart. Let's save the day. I mean, that's a different message.
We're not gonna do that again.
I know, that's what I'm saying. We're not doing that.
We're not doing that again. Okay, so, at this point, we've gathered a lot of information, we've had a lot of questions answered. I would like to move on to our next agenda item, but I would encourage board members that have any questions, concerns, thoughts to please communicate with Brian very soon. Obviously, time is of the essence for us. It is an aggressive timeline if we want to be successful, moving forward for this election, and, if it's not this election, I think that this has been a good exercise, and we would still have questions to ask, in order to make that decision. So, in the next few days, indicate to Brian if you have questions, concerns, and, recommendations on next steps, and we'll see if we need a special board meeting to move forward, or if our next regular meeting is appropriate. Sound good? Okay. All right. Dale, did we leave anything out? Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir,
for
for
being here.
coming up.
Drive safe.
Long days.
Yeah. Item I2 is our superintendent's report.
Yes, and I know it's late. I'm gonna really cut this short. I just want to recognize this time of the year for the school district and for staff as a whole. It's a long stretch and a tiring time, and there is a lot of work going on getting us to spring break and to the end of the year. But we've got semesters ending with Montecito, with OPMS, with trimesters. We've got just a lot of work coming to a head. Budget stuff is of critical concern, and I really want to take this time to honor our cabinet members. We had an amazing LCAP meeting yesterday that took a lot of work to organize. Had staff, students, parents, community members, classified and certificated staff giving input. Those types of events take a lot of time to get this input from them. I participated in small groups where people felt valued, provided amazing input, lots of great ideas. At the same time, HR is just absolutely in the highest gear right now, with not just still staffing current openings, but looking to next year, going through collective bargaining agreements since we've settled already to get those updated. They have just, the list goes on and on, just from personal experience between now and the end of the year. It is a wild time. Admin services dealing with the budget, specifically Daniel putting together the second interim, looking at everything that's going on. We've called him into meetings with a moment's notice 3 or 4 times where he was, I know, in the middle of a million other things. So we brought him over after a big apology, but we needed him, and he has been there nonstop for all of us. So also with that, Tori, we welcome you, and look forward to you starting on the 25th. But I just want to honor our staff here. Some of the best ways that we can support our sites during this time, and everyone that is in this stressful time, is by ourselves being calm, being supportive, continuing our service mindset, and that's not always easy this time of year, but I see it everywhere, and it is just a joy to be here, be at work, and to work alongside everybody. So thank you all very much.
Board reports.
It's not going to be long. I just want to convey and broadcast high praise I heard from the staff of OPMS, how they sent praise to the new principal of the school, Ms. Benedetto. So they thanked us for doing, that was the best thing we could have done for that school in recent time, and how great that whole administrative team is on OPMS, all 3 of them, the trio of principal, assistant principal, Mr. Hall. What a great job they're doing all together, and what a great team they are. And I was happy to see OPMS being presenting our board meeting today.
Thank you. Roger, anything?
Yeah, just one thing. Along with what I mentioned last time about grant funding
anything?
Yeah, I've got a couple of thank yous. Thank you to OPMS for their presentation tonight. Man, there was a lot of staff here, and I think that's a direct result of the new culture that is being built there at that school, which is Mrs. Benedetto gets a lot of the credit, but so do every one of those staff members for being willing to engage and truly take pride in the facility. I had the opportunity to meet with her and go on the site, and she's exactly what we've been hoping for. After I met her, I talked with Mr. Newman, and I described her as a force, and I mean that in the most positive way. She truly is, and she sucks you in, and before you know it, you're like, yeah, we need to do this. And so, great choice, staff. And please convey my appreciation to her and the entire staff. I'd like to go on to the high school now. Every 15 minutes is a phenomenal program. I would like to thank whomever provided the funding for that. It's impactful. It truly makes a difference with our students, having had 2 kids who had the opportunity to witness that. It's not a happy thing. It's not a joyful thing, but it is an incredibly impactful thing. So thank you to staff and leadership for making sure that that's a part, that is something that our students get to experience. And then, I talked to a little bit about it earlier. What a great time to be in this district with the positive results of our LCAP survey. And those are meaningful questions, and the response was really good, and we can't rest on our laurels. We have to continue the great work that is going on every day with a response to every one of those questions. But don't think that those results fell on deaf ears. They hit pretty hard, and they hit really well. And then I think a lot of it stems from our leadership in the superintendent and cabinet, and just relaying it down that we are here to help, we are here to serve, we are here to make good, sound decisions, and tell us what you need. We might not be able to say yes, but we hope to find a way to say yes. So Brian, thanks for what you're doing, and please thank your leadership team, because it really is impactful. I too have been approached by staff members that all throughout the district saying, wow, we're headed in a really good direction. It's a good time to be a member of this district. So thank you to everybody who's making it better every day.
Very nice. Well, and very hard to follow.
Sorry.
Thank you, Darren. All good stuff. So mine is more housekeeping. For anybody interested, the Dale Scott presentation is already online with our agenda. So feel free to browse that and send your friends to it if they have questions about what we saw tonight. And board members, if you have not done your Form 700, they are due, so please do them. If you need help with that, let somebody know, Karina or someone. All right, that's it. If there's nothing else and no objection to adjourning the meeting, I will do so now. Meeting adjourned.